The victims could not be saved, and the shack was completely destroyed. A suspect whose age and identity remain unknown at this stage has been hospitalized for medical treatment. The motive behind the incident is yet to be determined, and investigations are ongoing. Police urge anyone with information to contact the SAPS Crime Stop hotline at 08600 10111 or the nearest police station. Anonymous tip-offs can also be reported via the MySAPS app.
And finally, a BBC investigation has found that Turkey has significantly increased its military presence in northern Iraq, where Ankara says it's pursuing the banned Kurdish militant group, the PKK. Most of the 136 Turkish military bases have been built in the last 7 years. BBC analysis suggests Ankara now holds de facto control of more than 2,000 square meters of Iraqi land. Kamaran Osman from a community peacemaker team says many people unconnected with the PKK have been killed, but some of the death certificates he has seen are unclear.
In most of the death certificates, they only wrote infijar, which means explosion. Explosion can be a bottle of gas exploding. It can be a mine exploding. It can be anything exploding. So they don't want to write the right cause of the death.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa is to establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe if attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the TRC to the NPA. For SAFM News, I'm Utsile Saku, headlines at 3:30.
Coming up in your sports this hour, injury blow for Amajita as captain Aseko Tiwani heads home ahead of their clash today. Djokovic set to miss Italian Open, and Bal debutant Vela de Decker stun defending champions Petro de Luanda. More details at 3:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in King Williamstown.
From the shows that bring us laughter to the moments that inspire us, your SABC TV license makes it all possible. Every license paid supports local stories, top talent, and the programs that unite South Africa. Pay your TV license today. Visit tvlic.co.za or your nearest retail outlet. Hashtag your screen, your story. Together, we make it happen.
What matters is still coming up. It's a massive football rivalry. It is one of the biggest football derbies in the world. Amakhosi clashes with the Buccaneers at the Calabash. This is the Betway Premiership. Experience the Soweto Derby, Kaizer Chiefs versus Orlando Pirates on Saturday, 3 May at 2 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Then on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
He called himself a king. Others call him dangerous. Andrew Tate, the man who groomed the world. The shocking documentary that uncovers how one man built an empire of influence and manipulation. From viral videos to global headlines, discover the truth behind the persona and the impact on millions of young minds. Andrew Tate, the man who groomed the world. Thursday, the 1st of May at 10 p.m. on S3. Open up. S3.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And this is this is the National Pulse as we connect you to the pulse of the nation, of the National Pulse every single day. So welcome to the show. My name's Ashraf Garda. Lots to consider, lots to talk about. We now have a day for the revised budget. 21st of May is when that will be tabled. Is it the case of Finish and Klar? And you may have heard the news about the president looking at an inquest into the TRC issues, and that's been an ongoing story. clearly we must talk about that and more, right? Now, to connect with me, you can call in live, not quite yet, but say this number, 086 000 2032. However, WhatsApp and text messages, you can do that ASAP right now. To do that, here's the number, 0614 104 107. And as always, and many people do, you can tweet us as well right away. Use the hashtag The National Pulse and then tag SFM Radio and do tag myself, Ashraf Garda. Right, so we'll talk, by the way, it's 100 days for Donald Trump. How would you rate it? Internally, there's almost an internal, not almost, there is an internal Donald Trump, an external Donald Trump, 100 days. And then maybe the third factor in that internal external is how has the world had to respond to Donald Trump? We certainly know South Africa has been, in many ways, on the back foot since the re-emergence of Donald Trump as the leader of the USA. But let's talk about an issue of serious importance back home here, and that's got to do around the issue of the Employment Equity Amendment Act, right? Now, the DA has launched a constitutional challenge to Section 15A of the Employment Equity Amendment Act. Well, why so? Well, the party is arguing that in its current form, the Act gives the Minister of Labour unwarranted authority to enforce rigid national race quotas in the workplace. Needless to say, they clearly don't like that. Let's find out what they mean with Michael Bagram, who's the DA MP and the party spokesperson on employment and labour. Michael, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf. I really appreciate it, and thank you for giving me the platform. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And it is a very important on the eve of Workers' Day.
Well,
very
it is.
Important.
Yeah. I take it, there's been different iterations of issues of employment equity. Help us understand this firstly, in your understanding, what has shifted between what has existed before versus what we have now?
Well, quite simply, very little, but let's just try and unpack it a little bit. The legislation itself calls for regulations, like all legislation. And what the minister has done in terms of the section which we're challenging is he's not put quotas, he's not put targets, he's put actual figures down and said you have to meet these figures or more, or better. And the reality is we've had 20 years at least of employment equity, and for these past 20 years, it's been going from bad to worse. And the unemployment figures, according to COSATU, have now reached 42%. For the youth on the expanded definition, we're almost at 70% in most of the areas for the youth. So what the minister has done, what she has done, and it's difficult to blame her because it was her predecessor that put it together. But what she's done is she's chosen quotas. There's no scientific calculation anywhere. We've asked for how was it calculated. They can't give you an answer on that one. But then they've put certain industries in certain areas and said, well, this is what you've got to employ. So you can imagine the whole idea of the Constitution is to try and better the situation for the previously disadvantaged. That's the whole idea. But this is, in fact, making it worse. And when you make something worse, then you're falling foul of not only our Constitution, but every ethic that one would think of, because every family is basically affected by unemployment. There's no such thing as a family, but full employment in the family. So everyone's affected by unemployment, and the Democratic Alliance strongly believes that this is just going to make it worse. We've put together a whole host of ideas as to how we can actually start getting it better. And I think the ministry has recognized that anyway, because they're saying, even in that same piece of legislation, they're saying if your business is under 50 employees, if you employ under 50 people, never mind what your turnover is, then you are exempt from the employment equity legislation. What is that really saying? What that is saying is that we know, government knows, in fact all the economists know, that the majority of jobs created around the world are within the small business sector. So that's an accepted economic fact. If that's the case, why then look at under 50 employees and say, we're exempting you? In other words, what the government is now saying is, we understand that employment equity is a handbrake to job creation. And we understand that small business creates jobs, So let's encourage them to create the jobs, and let's put some sort of handbrake or shackles on the larger businesses, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay. Let's pick up on some of those things. I mean, maybe that last part you made the point. Do you agree with that statement that, in fact, employment equity in the South African context, because this is important, in the South African context, is a handbrake to employment and job creation?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, not only in the South African context, but anywhere in the world. We first saw that with the Nazis, who had the same thing. They had equity quotas and exempted certain people, and other people weren't exempt. We've seen that with the National Party. The whole National Party legislature was around race classification. Now we're bringing it straight back into the South African milieu. What happens if Michael Bagram says, I identify as being black? Who's going to tell me I'm not?
But okay, let's get some more context. I mean, don't you think, and you know this and I know this, something had to happen, some intervention had to be made 1994 onwards to try and create the type of redress in this society. And by and large, I mean, we haven't quite succeeded, but is the opposite of that just let it be?
No. I agree with you. We did need something, and we still need something. Because if you still look at the top echelons of the big businesses, it's pale and male. So that we agree on. I think that, and the Democratic Alliance is obviously very much harshly aware of that fact. Let's not go away from the facts. And another fact is we do need to, never mind legislation, we do need to work towards reflecting the demographics of South Africa. But the minute you start telling businesses, we're going to run you, we're going to tell you who's going to be productive, who's going to be able to perform, then you're delving into running the business. We have come up with very different ideas, and I've been speaking about this for years. I've been in Parliament for 11 years, and for 11 years I've told the last three ministers of employment and labour, let's deregulate, especially deregulate the small business sector, uncouple them from the bargaining council. There's a whole list, not for at all technical stuff, but what I'm saying is if I had the ability to deregulate the small business sector almost completely, we'd probably create close on 2 to 3 million jobs with a stroke of a pen. It'll cost nothing.
So let's just understand, I mean, the difference between, what was before, which were, quotas, right, to you talking about now specific numbers. How does that differ, and why does that warrant then you going to the Constitutional Court? I'm looking at the broad principle, but the actual differences between then and now.
Well, the actual difference is that the business can't have an input into it. The minister appoints the figure, and that figure you will follow. And what I'm trying to say, and what we will be arguing in the courtroom, is that it's got to be appropriate. It's got to be fit for purpose. It's got to be a function of that business. And the minister's saying, yes, by the way, if you can't find a person, then you need to prove to us that you can't find a person, and therefore you can't do whatever's necessary. But that never works. What we're seeing now is that the minister is tying the hands of business, which it wasn't done before. It wasn't working anyway. The whole idea of social engineering is pernicious. And I think every economist in the world will agree with that social engineering is pernicious. And this is a form of social engineering. So I believe the legislation is bad in the first place, but now they've taken it one step worse. What the minister's saying is, I've set the quota, you meet the quota, and it's up to you to try and argue why you haven't met the quota.
Okay,
otherwise we're going to find you.
Well, let's see what happens next week. I mean, here's the last thought on this one. You talked about social engineering, right? If it is left to people on their own, I mean, clearly that hasn't worked either, because there's no intent from people on their own to want to transform society. And I'm saying this, and we can debate the numbers, but let's agree that by and large, besides that emergence of a small degree of a black middle class and those BE beneficiaries, that South Africa economically, the people that is, reflects very much a similar trend to what it was in the 1990s. Now, that you and I know can't be allowed to continue. So isn't it a fair case to say, since it can't be allowed to continue, we can't leave it to people on their own devices because they won't make those changes anyway?
I think they will. And I agree with you, it does reflect the same, and that legislation has certainly not helped. Employment equity has not helped. But let me put it to you this way, from an anecdotal point of view, and you tell me I'm wrong. I've been practicing labour law for 40 years. So for the last 25 years, we've had employment equity on our statute book, and we've had the ability for everyone, every individual, to come forward and say, I've been discriminated against because I'm male and I'm black. Or I've been discriminated against, I'm a disabled female. They've had that ability, and it's there on all the pieces of legislation. There's lots of legislation ability. I get cases every day that I take to the CCMA and to the bargaining councils. Not once in the last 15 years have I had any individual coming forward and saying, I wasn't employed because I'm black, or I wasn't employed because I'm disabled, or I wasn't employed because I'm a female. Not once. So now you're taking the whole mess, the entire mess of your legislation, and imposing it on the business community, saying, you're not employing people that are black. Well, where's the proof? The only thing you can show me is that the top echelons and the professional echelons are still male and pale. That's true. But we need to do the hard yards in the country.
Well, let's see what happens next week. I mean, one may argue the point. You don't have to answer this now. What about having consultations with your GNU partner in this issue? Leave it for next week, Michael Bagram, the DA MP and the party spokesperson on employment and labour. What do you make of that and his pitch and his party's pitch that in terms of the current legislation, it's just not working and these specific impositions don't work at all? 100 days of Donald Trump. What's working? What's not? We'll talk about that next.
In just 10 years, over 850 million winners have shared more than 31 billion rand with the National Lottery. That's not a dream, that's real money, won by real people, right here in Mzansi. So the question is, why not you? The next winner could come from your hometown. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
The Spanish Princess series continues the story of Queen Catherine and Henry VIII. Catherine's struggle to produce an heir places her marriage and position in the court at risk, and she's haunted by her choices from the past. Despite proving herself a politician, a diplomat, and a national inspiration, and even a military commander, Catherine must battle to save her love with the king and to preserve the peace and prosperity of their reign. The Spanish Princess Season 2 airs Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Can you believe it's 100 days already in office for Donald Trump? And I think in many ways, as we reflect on the 100 days, one has to separate Donald Trump, the internal leader, and Donald Trump's foreign policy, because I think it reflects so much differences and how it impacts on all of us. With me is Musa Mdunge, who's the political analyst and PhD candidate at the University of Dundee in Scotland. Musa, I appreciate your time. It's been a while. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to you and to the listeners.
Thank you. So perhaps let me start with this. One word for you to describe 100 years of Donald Trump in office. What would you say? Just one word.
Chaotic. I think that's the best word to describe it. It's a very, very chaotic period under Donald Trump's 100 days. And in many ways, it is perhaps the feeling that underscores how Americans are feeling right now and explains why the polling numbers are so bad.
So interesting. I mean, chaotic is very much the opposite of convincing, right? What has he done that is so chaotic? And you made the point that the numbers in terms of polling internally are bad. Is it chaotic internal or chaotic external?
Well, I would say a bit of both. a bit of both. So if you think about what has happened in the past 100 days, you consider the scandals within his administration, perhaps not as much, reported internationally, but certainly in terms of American news cycle, the scandals around the use of signal being used by members of the administration to discuss, war plans in Yemen, for example. When you consider stories like that, for normal Americans, especially those in the swing state, it doesn't augur well for the president and can explain the poll numbers.
But normally, and I think the same would apply in South Africa, 100 days is just about 3 months or so. There's a sense of like it's still effectively the honeymoon period. You have to give people time to bed in. Now, of course, he's been a president before, we know that, but he's also come in and ultimately a convincing winner in that last election. So my point, therefore, is this: what has changed in terms of his promise to the people or the American people versus his delivery?
Well, perhaps not so much, right? So he's been speaking about tariffs. It's something that he's been speaking about for over 30 years. He doesn't speak about it now, and he's acting upon it perhaps more aggressively than he did in his first term. And then you consider then the deportations. I think the deportations are perhaps the stinger for Donald Trump as well, because in many ways, one gets the sense that there's an overreach in terms of the policy. So Americans do support stronger policies on immigration, but they sense an overreach. And it is this overreach on his immigration policy, overreach on his foreign policy, overreach on his economic policy that is spelling the trouble for the Trump administration.
Okay. So you mentioned the point about, suddenly sentiment internally is very, very different towards the person. But it's not significant enough for him to be concerned. He's entrenched, right?
No, I think for Donald Trump at this moment, it's not a moment where I think he would certainly think he's in a crisis, because when you then are to look at what are American sentiments towards the president himself, then all of a sudden the polling all of a sudden starts to look good for Donald Trump. So the man is still popular, and that speaks to the fact that in terms of his own base, they are still holding out, assuming that they can accept, temporary pain for long-term benefit. And I think that's how Donald Trump is already trying to sell the economic pain that his economic policies are causing.
Now, his big line has been "Make America Great Again," right? Are his policies? Of course, they irritate me as someone in South Africa, but I'm not the electorate, right? Is those policies, do they reflect a move towards what he sees as "Make America Great Again"? Never mind who else may lose in that quest.
Well, let's look at what he's already said are the indicators of what is making this America great again. He has said that through DOGE and the cuts that he is doing, that he's going to save Americans billions of dollars. He has said that one of the indicators that his Make America Great policy is working is that revenue will start to stream in through the tariffs. But of course, we are still a few months out in terms of the impact of the tariffs. And this is the Trump administration, honestly, that makes policy on the whim, on the go, and with each X, policy changes. So again, going back to that chaoticness, if chaoticness is what Americans are willing to accept in the process, then kudos to him. But at this point, I don't see the Trump administration truly selling this story very well. And in many ways, it is because, again, that internal chaos happening within his administration when you consider people like his Secretary of Defense, for example.
Now, in the last few weeks, not the last month, before that, I often made this Freudian slip and I called it Elon Trump, right? But I'm saying this now very intentionally. Why do I get a sense that the Elon part of the Elon-Trump partnership has sort of resided a bit? There seems to be a drop-off for what Elon Musk is saying.
Certainly, as the weeks have gone by, the Musk's sort of influence on the administration has become weaker in many ways. It is intentional on his end. We already see what has happened to, of course, to, of course, the stocks, to his stocks, as well as his own reputation really has dropped down. And so for Musk, this partnership hasn't really augured well, and even for Trump. But I guess, again, Trump knows how to sell what he's able to sell. The difference here is he is the politician and Musk is not, and that is being borne out as the weeks of this administration continue. I don't see Elon Musk lasting, say, even the fall. I don't see him staying all the way, even until the fall. I see him really leaving the administration before that time.
Okay, that's quite interesting. What about, I mean, I know the Canadians effectively have a new leader and who's also certainly no supporter of Donald Trump. Just going forward, as we wrap up now, what about the different countries of significance, including South Africa and, of course, their neighbors, Canada and Mexico, and then we can talk about all the European countries and the Russians too, and Israel and many others that Trump has left his footprint on. How are they responding to him, and how are they likely to respond to him in the next few months?
Well, in the next few months, we are going to see these countries really start to deepen trade relations, defense relations. Canada has already spoken about deepening ties with the United Kingdom, pursuing a free trade agreement on that end, including an agreement with the European Union. I would assume non-American NATO members will strengthen defense cooperation, seeing that they can no longer depend on America's word. And for countries like South Africa, I think South Africa, this will truly be a time where we will be tested in terms of what we say is a non-aligned foreign policy position. Let us see if that non-aligned foreign policy position will augur well for us in being able to deepen trade relations. Also not forgetting that South Africa, where South Africa moves, Southern Africa tends to move. So we also have to consider the rest of the region as we deepen trade and diplomatic relations with other countries during this chaotic Trump period.
And just the last thing, yes, no. I mean, in this new American policy that they're pursuing, right? Do you find that instead of being, all conquering, they actually could find themselves inadvertently becoming more isolationist? Yes, no?
Yes. It's a definite yes. Isolationist for America, and for China, on the other hand, they're going to expand relations. So that is the consequence of Trump's trade ties.
Okay, and I take it you and I are both not invited to that 100-day party. Much appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll chat sometime soon again. Fascinating input into Donald Trump, 100 days in office, with Musa Mdunge, who's a political analyst based at the University of Dundee in Scotland. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Utsile Saku.
Thanks, Ashraf. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa is to establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe if attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the TRC to the NPA. The Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, says his department is preparing to address Cabinet on the lifting of the Pebble Bed modular reactor from maintenance in an effort to enhance the use of nuclear energy in the country's energy mix. And Palestinian journalists have condemned the arrest of the prominent local reporter Ali Al-Samoudi by Israeli forces. He was detained in a pre-dawn raid in the West Bank city of Jenin. Details at 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound in Crown is queuing towards Main Reef Road. The N1 southbound in Midrand has a stationary vehicle at Buccleuch interchange queuing traffic and slow-moving traffic in the Crown City West area, so expect delays. In KZN, the N2 southbound has a stationary vehicle before Spaghetti Junction. The M13 eastbound in Kloof has a stationary truck on Fields Hill, and the M7 eastbound queuing towards South Coast Road. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary truck at Plattekloof Road. The M3 southbound is slow-moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 northbound slow-moving towards the N1 Koeberg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, to me, what are we going to talk about?
All right, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Let's start things off with football, where Amajita have suffered a huge blow in the CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations, with influential captain Aseko Tiwani forced to return home due to a knee injury. Tiwani returned from Egypt last night alongside Kaizer Chiefs striker Naledi Hlongwane, who appears to be struggling to be registered for the tournament. Now, the Mamelodi Sundowns defender, who was one of the most experienced players in the team, got injured in the opening game against the hosts, and coach Raymond Daka shared an update.
The captain, I think it might not be so bad, but it's something that cannot heal now. That's the challenge. So we had to release him.
Okay, so he's gone back home?
No, he will be going home tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's something that might take more than 3 weeks. We are not sure, but from the doctor's side, it's not so bad, but it's something that they can immediately play now.
Mm-hmm. How big of a blow is that?
The biggest blow, we had him Begezeli, so I would know that at the back I'm rock solid. So you don't have to cry. The situation is football, it happened, and we'll see how we get forward without them.
Well, Amajita are in action today in the Under-20 AFCON, and they are playing Tanzania this afternoon, hoping to bounce back to winning ways. Remember that first one against Egypt, they lost, meaning they are at the bottom of their group. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso says that he hopes ambition will drive them in their quest to compete on different fronts in the midst of a congested schedule. The Brazilians face Richards Bay today as they aim to extend their lead in the Betway Premiership.
Just ambition and ambition and ambition and ambition. When you feed yourself from victories, you need to look on the next one in order to keep your soul in peace, your mind in peace. That's what we want to do, is now approach the championship matches that we have ahead and try to get as much points as possible, as quick as possible.
In rugby, the boss of European Professional Club Rugby, Jacques Reynaud, says that the Champions Cup isn't perfect, but is still a very good tournament. The Champions Cup includes 24 teams from the French top 14, English Premiership and United Rugby Championship, which features clubs from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Italy and South Africa. Now, teams are split into 4 groups and don't play against each other from their own league in the early rounds. And Reynaud admitted that some changes are needed, but says that the South African teams are eager to succeed in the tournament, even though their participation has raised concerns around travelling and scheduling. In tennis, Iga Swiatek came from a set down to beat Madison Keys 6-6-3 and 6-2 in the Madrid Open. She next faces Coco Gauff or Mira Andreeva in the semi-finals. Meanwhile, record 24-time Grand Slam winner Novak Djokovic will not take part in the Italian Open. That is from the 7th to the 18th of May. Djokovic pulled out in the midst of a 3-match losing streak, shedding doubt on how well he will be able to play at the upcoming French Open as he continues to look for a record 25th Grand Slam trophy and 100th tournament title overall. In athletics, former South African 200-meter champion Benjamin Richardson sees the upcoming Grand Slam track Miami Invitation, which is set for Friday and Saturday in the US, as a prime opportunity to improve his times. Richardson will compete in both the 100 and 200-meter events, going head-to-head with some of the world's top sprinters.
Next is the Grand Slam in Miami. Flying out on Tuesday. Hopefully I can also do something there, just put my name out there. And so Grand Slams, Diamond Leagues, get race ready. I think yesterday was my second 100 of the year. And so not really race ready, but I am fit. And so the more races I have, the better I become. Slowly but surely I'll get into those 19 ranges, and that will just keep happening. But as of right now, it's this, and then Grand Slam, and we'll see what goes on from there.
Well, in cricket, England are considering former New Zealand international Tim Southee as their fast bowling consultant. James Anderson has held the position since he retired from Test cricket last summer, but is unavailable this year because of his playing commitments with Lancashire. Now, Southee retired from international cricket in December as New Zealand's all-time leading wicket taker. Finally, in basketball, debutante Villa Dakar from Senegal stunned the defending champion Petro de Luanda of Angola at Dakar Arena Arena, winning their first head-to-head matchup in the competition. 65-64, it was ASC's Villa de Casa second win over a BAL champion and their second win in this year's Sahara Conference, having defeated US Monastir 70-67 on the opening night on Saturday. Before I say goodbye, Ashraf, I mean, with the news that Djokovic has now pulled out of the Italian Open, I can't help it but think about retirement for him. Is it coming sooner than we think?
Well, I mean, and the big issue is if he retires, then what's going to happen to the sport? Who replaces him?
There's Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, you need rivals as well.
I know.
You have that? I would have thought you said, is there any chance that Arsenal's coach could be retiring soon? Because I haven't seen a single guy with an Arsenal top today.
No,
just so that you know.
Listen, they still have another leg to come back. Okay. Maybe they can.
Maybe they don't have a
really
leg to stand on.
Hard yesterday.
Do they have a leg to stand on, losing 1-0 at home? Anyway, I have not seen a single guy with an Arsenal top today at the SABC anywhere, which is very different. I've seen even Man United guys after they lose. I'm just quite amazed. Anyway, All right, we'll see life after Djokovic or life after defeating the Champions League for Arsenal. Oh my God, I better not say that. I'll get into trouble. More sport in an hour.
Do you want an experience of a lifetime? Where every day is filled with challenges of providing Lisa Vanderpump curated experiences while dealing with rivalries, romances, and misadventures. It's drama at Vanderpump's French Estate. Chatel Rosabelle and the staff can't wait to give you a front row seat to all the drama. Catch Vanderpump Villa, Saturdays on S3 at 8:30 p.m. S3 open up.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
So what's the one word that Musa Mdunge used to describe 100 days of office for Donald Trump? He said, chaotic. What's your one word to describe Donald Trump 100 days in office? Let's hear it. You can WhatsApp, text or voice note right away or post on social media. Just text us using the hashtag The National Pulse on Twitter. Well, here's a 100 days comment.
Yes, Ashraf. Internationally, 100 days of Donald Trump in office, we describe it as upsetting and shocking. But now maybe nationally in his own country, I presume they may just feel lukewarm about his management or administration. Thanks, it's Willia in Kuma.
Well, thank you for that comment. Let's get another comment about the initial chat we had around the DA's challenge to the Employment Equity Act.
Hi, Ashraf. On the issue of employment, I am black. I work for a white-owned company. We get our increases every month. I mean, every year. We get our bonuses every December. I promise you, Ashraf, if this company was owned by black people, we would not have these privileges. And not to take away from black professionals, but it's a reality. It's a reality, Ashraf. Thank you.
I'll tell you what stood out for me, that one, is we get our increases every month. I quite like that one more than anything else you've said. But I get your point. Here's another one on employment.
Ashraf and Police FM listeners, good day. My name is Tulani Nzima in Croydon. I think Michael is out of touch with reality. I mean, think about this from a social point of view. How on earth does a Tulani go and fight, for example, against a white-owned company, very huge company that does not want to hire me based on my color, but they are using what we call tactical. They are using tactics in order to discriminate. I will not have that money to go and fight them. It's as simple as that. That is why a large chunk of people will go to interviews and never bother to demand feedback because they know that they will be frustrated. Thank you.
Okay, interesting point. Well, I tell you what, I think Michael Begram at the end admitted the fact that South Africa economically still reflects what South Africa economically looked like around the period before the first election. And that's the nub of the story. Because I made the point on Freedom Day or thereafter to say inequality, of all the big transformation issues, inequality had to be one of the biggest challenges. And you know what? It's virtually remained the same. On the other hand, he may have a point to say, so with all the interventions we've had, why is it not working? Does it need a radical change? Because it's certainly, why are so many people still so unemployed, are they?
Afternoon, Ashraf Matumata Eslepak Tembisa. I can describe those days as 100 days of hell. 100 days of hell. I thank you.
100 days of hell. Wow. In the meantime, the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has addressed the media briefing focused on the national budget, the country's fiscal outlook and parliamentary processes going forward. And this is what the SG had to say.
Myself, because I'm going to outline to you the positions of the ANC in terms of the recent developments. But the subject matter we are dealing with is not new. We have ventilated on the matter with other political parties, of which we had an opportunity to engage in a decent discussion with them on the budget impasse. And then Godlimpi is heading our Economic Transformation Committee, which also deals largely with matters that are related to the budget. So to enhance a central coordination and communication on behalf of the ANC on this particular matter of the budget, those are the faces you'll be dealing with, and the others which will be deployed from time to time by the spokesperson and the chief spokesperson, which is myself as the Secretary General, on this particular matter. So these are the guys you'll be looking for in relation to this matter. But it is important that we start from reminding you that what the ANC voted for in relation to the fiscal framework, together with other political parties. First, the fiscal framework was tabled by the Minister of Finance, and it was supported, subject to the strict condition that National Treasury facilitates the receipt of substitute revenue proposals from the committee, together with the corresponding expenditure savings that will form the basis of an alternative revenue instead of one, the proposed 0.5% point increase in value-added tax for 2025-2026 financial year, effective from the 1st of May 2025, in respect of which the committee has expressed serious concerns. Now, the committee includes the ANC, the DA, the Inkatha Freedom Party, Action SA, and who else into EFF, MKP. So those are the parties that constitute this committee, which we relate to here that serious concerns were raised. And the failure to adjust personal income tax brackets in line with the higher of the actual CPI inflation rate for 2024, or the projected CPI inflation rate for 2025 to prevent bracket creep. And furthermore, the committee recommends that the alternative revenue proposals, which is very important, the committee recommends that the alternative revenue proposals and expenditure savings to balance the 28 billion rand shortfall, which must effectively suspend the proposed increases.
Okay, and there's more from Mbalula. He then said that the ANC, well, is this a surprise? The ANC welcomes the withdrawal of the proposed VAT hike.
ANC, therefore, welcomes the formal withdrawal of the proposed VAT increase by the Minister of Finance and setting aside of the 2025 fiscal framework. This outcome is not a legal victory for any party, but a decisive political resolution rooted in consultation, maturity, and the guiding principles of the Freedom Charter, quote unquote, the people shall govern. The ANC remains steadfast in asserting that the work of government must be shaped not by courtrooms and media spectacle, but through democratic consultation, constructive consensus building, and revolutionary responsibility to the people. The political decision to reverse the VAT increase was reached after substantive engagement between the ANC and 10 other parties in parliament, all of whom demonstrated disciplined focus and patriotic clarity. This includes the Inkatha Freedom Party, Action SA Pan-Africanist Congress, Rise Mzansi, Build One South Africa, United Democratic Movement, Al-Jama Patriotic Alliance, Good Party, and the National Coloured Congress. We salute the collective maturity shown in reaching this outcome, a moment that affirmed that political differences need not paralyze governance, and that principle to cooperation in the national interest is not only possible but necessary.
And I'll take further comments from you as you, in your own way, connect to the National Pulse on air right after this.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Meet Maria. Meet her family, the Ramirez. One wrong step and they will have you swimming with the fishes. Meet Amadeo, a trained lawyer and member of the rival business clan, the Mateus. The two fall in love, and Maria's dreams of a happily ever after change when Madeo is murdered at their wedding. Their daughter, Jo, despises her mother's humble beginnings and will do anything to steal all of Maria's fortune. This is the world of Sweet Diva. Airs weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
April is Freedom Month, a time to reflect, remember, and celebrate. At SAFM, we honor the journey of our nation and the resilience of its people. United in the defense of our freedom and democracy, we salute every voice that keeps the spirit of liberation alive. Stay tuned to SAFM, where the nation comes together. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Call us on 086 000 2032.
So just how connected are you to the National Pulse? Let me feel your pulse. Michael in Lebeja, go for it. Hi.
Afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, good afternoon. Go for it.
Afternoon. Sometimes I find it a bit funny when, I hear people on radio say things about, Donald Trump, how chaotic it's been for the past 100 days and so on and so forth. 76 million also voted, Americans, not Africans, Americans, voted for Donald Trump. So if we want to find out anything about Donald Trump, let's go and ask those 76 million, how are they feeling in the past 100 days? Not as Africans sitting here and going by what media is telling us and saying all sorts. Donald Trump, he came on with one particular thing in mind to say, make America great again. And he's doing exactly that. And the people that voted for him, that's what they wanted him to do. And so he's doing what they wanted him to do. So you know, anyone else that's going to come on and he's being chaotic. He's being chaotic in what? How does the chaotic in what? That's
Okay. Well, I mean, that person who said it's chaotic is Musa Mdunga, who's a political analyst at the University of Dundee in Scotland. So we haven't just picked him off the street, but it doesn't mean you and I can't comment anyway, because, I mean, that's the reality of the interconnectedness of the world. For example, I mean, you get a tweet from South Africa about Afrikaners and Donald Trump and Elon Musk reacts. So in the same way, you get them talking about internal and external policies, and we react as well.
Yeah, but Ashraf, here's the thing. Let's make one thing clear. The so-called political analysts, right? That's just what it is. The political analysts, they are just expressing their views. They are no experts on anything. They just give their views, and they are labeled as political analysts. So we must not say because he's saying it's chaotic, that means it's chaotic. Let's go ask the 76 million people whether it's
okay. But the only way we can ask the 76 is we have to have a fresh, well, if not an election, we need to have a referendum. Can you imagine us, you and I, governing that referendum from South Africa? Michael, thanks for that. But I mean, the reality with the political analyst, you're not going to get an analyst who's a cricket writer and say, can you give me a comment on Donald Trump? By and large, these are people who already play in that space. And yes, you're right that we don't have to agree with them. And sometimes I agree, and sometimes I think they're completely wrong. But they do present a point of view, and we do hear that, so that it helps you and I get more informed. Now, I think in that case, that's the line we will always follow, outside of speaking to the people directly involved. Like, would I like to chat to Donald Trump? Absolutely. Maybe, Michael, you can set it up with your 76-odd million people, right? Lala in Polokwane, go for it. Hi, Lala.
Good afternoon, Asha.
Yeah, good talking to you.
I want to talk about the issue of the Employment Equity Act. To start with, what Mike has said about black people has not met a single black person who went to the CCMA or to the bargaining council to argue that he has been refused or rejected of being employed or being promoted because of the race issue. I think maybe he has been very unfortunate for not meeting such kind of people, but there are many who went to the CCMA. He can even look on the case laws from the Labour Court. He will see many of those cases that went to the CCMA.
I think, just to be fair to him, he said, he's in legal practice himself, and he said nobody has approached him. I don't think he said that it's the whole country. So it's very possible you and I could have approached somebody else, but not him directly, if we get the point.
Okay. Yes, but let me tell you what I wanted to tell you today. The Employment Equity Act, still from the beginning, it was a good policy when it was introduced many years ago, almost 2 decades ago. It was a good policy that we thought it will correct the injustices of the past. But it did not do that. Most of the companies, if you go to the private companies today and you see the people who have been employed as part of the employment equity, they are the people from outside the country. Or if they are not from outside the country, there will be Indians, there will be a colored, or there will be Chinese. One big question: why are the Chinese being part of the employment equity? To start with, this thing just not benefited us, the black people, to this age. So we don't even care whether the DA is challenging it or not, but it did not help us. It only helps people.
All right. Let's move on. You made your point. I mean, look, I hear you. I think the broader look. I certainly know about many black people who have never been in positions that they are in now. It was not for the Employment Equity Act. So I think you're wrong there. But maybe the broader question should be that if the purpose of the Employment Equity Act and its various iterations, right, should be to ensure that there's a balance in terms of the new intake of people that best reflects South Africa, then A, it must reflect that, and number two, they must be employed. Yes. In both cases, you could say that maybe that's not worked, because forget the reflection part. Are they employed? The unemployment numbers don't work. Is it only because of a bad economy, or is there something else? Something to consider. Lala, thanks for that. Let's get to
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Let's get further comments, and there's lots of comments naturally about Donald Trump. Wait, there's in fact, that's Lala. No, let's get to. No, we're going to get to. I'll get to another one there. Let's get to Donald Trump's comments as well.
Hi, Ashif. Errol from Durban. Yeah, one word Look, I'm a Donald Trump supporter. I know he's done a lot of bad things, but on the whole, I would say Donald Trump, tremendous. He's 100 days in office. That's me, Errol, Durban.
Right, there we are. That's Errol giving his thoughts. And here's another on Donald Trump.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf Mafuta. Ashraf, Donald Trump is going to go down in history as the American president who destroyed the American economy. Companies like Adidas and Ford are cutting down on exports because of these policies. One issue that Donald Trump doesn't realize that a lot of American companies do manufacturing in China, which indirectly affect them. So in any way, Americans are going to suffer out of his policies, Ashraf.
Well, I hear you. Let's see that is actually true. Bruce, before we get to news, Bruce, your thoughts from Rebecca. Go for it, Bruce.
Yes, thanks so much. The level of analysts you sometimes get on the show with this Trump story, you would think that Trump hasn't done anything good in the first 100 days.
Okay.
Now, you and I surely can agree that if we had to list his accomplishments, some of them are incredible. But you get these analysts on, they must be biased because they can't seem to recognize the good with the bad. Trump's got issues, but he's made. Why do we never hear about the accomplishments? They always focus on the negatives. Let's hear a bit of balance. Let's hear the good news.
Okay.
For a change.
Bruce, I take your point. I mean, look, we don't script to an analyst as to how they must analyze, okay? And I won't say they're biased. I think they do have a perspective. And out of that prism, that's how they view things, right? But your point is taken. Let me put it this way as well to other people too. 100 days of Donald Trump. What's your one word to describe Donald Trump? 100 days in office. But here's the other one. What do you think are the three biggest achievements of Donald Trump 100 days in office? Let's see who comes up with something. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Utsile.
Thanks, Ashraf. In the news at 4 o'clock, inquiry into delayed TRC prosecutions to be established and blanket ban on personal laptops in prison found unlawful. President Cyril Ramaphosa is to establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe if attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the TRC to the NPA. Ramaphosa maintains that all affected families deserve closure and justice. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
Allegations of improper influence in delaying or hindering the investigation and prosecution of apartheid-era crimes have persisted from previous administrations. Through this commission, President Ramaphosa is determined that the true facts be established and the matter brought to finality. The presidency will shortly make an announcement on the head of the Commission of Inquiry, the timeframes, and the full terms of reference.
The Constitutional Court has ruled that the blanket ban on personal laptops in prison cells is unlawful and violates the constitutional right to further education. The judgment follows an inmate, Mbalenhle Ntuli's challenge. He took the head of the Johannesburg prison and the Correctional Services Minister to court for denying him access to a laptop for studying. Ntuli's counsel argued that the Correctional Services Department's policy prevented him from studying. This is how Justice Stephen Majid delivered judgment.
Any inmate in a correctional center registered as a student with a recognized tertiary or further educational institution and who reasonably needs a computer to support their studies, and any student who has registered for a course of study that reasonably requires a computer as a compulsory part of the course is entitled to use their personal computer without the use of a modem in their cell.
The Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, says his department is preparing to address Cabinet on the lifting of the Pebble Bed modular reactor from maintenance in an effort to enhance the use of nuclear energy in the country's energy mix. Ramokgopa was the main speaker at one of the sessions at the second G20 Energy Transitions Working Group meeting in Cape Town. He says South Africa already has technology to develop small modular reactors for the purposes of including more nuclear into the energy mix.
Work is at an advanced stage to recommend to Cabinet
approval to lift the Pebble Bed Modular Reactor from care and maintenance. We will revive the PBMR Modular Reactor program in South Africa.
Minister of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, Dr. Deon George, says a framework and legislation aimed at supporting worker growth in the fishing industry is on the pipeline. George was speaking at the Fishing for Freedom tour in Hout Bay ahead of Workers' Day. He says there's a need for increased business engagement in coastal economies.
Well, it's absolutely all about the people and about economic upliftment and jobs. We need jobs in our economy. So, for example, if we improve the harbours, we can attract business to the harbour, and so you already have that activity. Also, you can improve tourism. But also, we've got massive opportunities in aquaculture, because if our fish in the wild are depleting, then we can grow our fish. We can create massively successful aquaculture industries in our country. And that we've got the framework, we've got the legislation that's almost about to go to Parliament. So we're making enormous strides in that.
Finally, further afield, Palestinian journalists have condemned the arrest of the prominent local reporter Ali Al-Samoudi by Israeli forces. He was detained in a pre-dawn raid in the West Bank city of Jenin. The BBC's Yolande Nell reports.
He was interrogated for half an hour at an unknown location, his son says, and has since been transferred to an Israeli hospital due to a deterioration in his health. Mr. Al-Samoudi has worked with local and international media. 3 years ago, he was working with the Palestinian-American reporter Shireen Abu Akleh when she was shot dead by an Israeli sniper at the entrance to Jenin refugee camp. He was injured by gunfire.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa is to establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe if attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the TRC to the NPA. For SAFM News, I'm Utsile Saku, back with headlines at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound in Crown is queuing towards Main Reef Road, and President Forshire Drive in Boskrane is closed between CR Swat Drive and Kelly Avenue. In KZN, the M7 eastbound queuing towards South Coast Road, and the M7 eastbound in Pinetown queuing towards North Dean exit. In Cape Town, Victoria Road is slow moving through Woodstock, and Voortrekker Road in Goodwood slow moving at the N7 checks Havel Drive junction. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
In just 10 years, over 850 million winners have shared more than 31 billion rand with the National Lottery. That's not a dream, that's real money, won by real people, right here in Mzansi. So the question is, why not you? The next winner could come from your hometown. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Handa, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
After a 2-0 away win earlier this season against Ipswich Town, the Toffees are confident of another victory.
Batters it beyond Murrich, and Everton lead at Portman Road.
Meanwhile, the Tractor Boys believe the only way to make pressure mild is to triumph.
Far post is Ben Johnson. It's 2-0 Ipswich. What on earth is going on?
This is the Premier League. Catch the superb clash between Everton FC and Ipswich Town FC. The Saturday 3 May at 3:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Meet Maria. Meet her family, the Ramirez. One wrong step and they will have you swimming with the fishes. Meet Amadeo, a trained lawyer and member of the rival business clan, the Mateus. The two fall in love, and Maria's dreams of a happily ever after change when Madeo is murdered at their wedding. Their daughter, Jo, despises her mother's humble beginnings and will do anything to steal all of Maria's fortune. This is the world of Sweet Diva. Airs weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, they were interesting, those thoughts on Donald Trump, 100 days in office, about, not enough praise for him. But I'll leave it to you. What for you would be the one word to describe 100 days in office of Donald Trump, keeping in mind that Donald Trump's impact is not the same as, I'm trying to think about it, not the same as Ghana or Algeria, because just by its very nature of his position in world politics, like it or not, when they do sneeze, we do catch a cold, right? So yeah, keep that coming. And then if you think there's one thing or two things that's absolutely worked. But interestingly enough, that comment that we had about why don't we poll the 76 million Americans? Yeah, how are we going to do that? But here's the point. There's already a CNN poll, and this is interesting. CNN latest poll suggests that 59% of Americans feel that Trump has worsened economic conditions in the USA. You got that? 59% believe that he has worsened economic conditions in the USA. Now, as I say that, I must also add, Fox News has a different perspective. What a poll from them would be, I don't know. And if you go back to Trump's election policy, as he quoted his grandson, I think it was, or his son. It's like, hey, get with the big podcasters. So I wonder what a Joe Rogan type of poll, what would that come up with in terms of where Donald Trump is right now? What about a poll on the TRC? It's something we often talk about, so many years into democracy and the overall impact of the TRC. Now, we know that many people have been very, very disgruntled. I always felt that we should actually have a TRC at community level, not just at national level, at communities. You go to every single community in your local town hall. I always felt that allows just the ordinary person to express themselves. And I'd love to express myself on my own experiences, without being locked up or anything, just my own experiences during the apartheid era. Now, it is in that context of this news here, the President, Ramaphosa, he's now confirmed he'll establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe whether there were attempts to obstruct the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred to by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to the NPA. Right, what does this mean? Who does it impact? Let's get the thoughts firstly from the son of Fort Kalata. I'm talking about Lucanio Kalata. I appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. What do you make of this news?
Oh, we're delighted about it. We're very delighted about it. Look, we obviously have been, excuse me, we've been in communication with, the presidency through his lawyers. In that, we knew a few days ago that he was going to obviously establish this because as the families, this is what we had hoped would be ordered by a court. But then obviously the president decided that he doesn't need that court order and that he will accede to our requests as the families to establish this commission of inquiry. So we're very pleased that the presidency has finally announced it publicly, and we look forward to the start.
And I think the good news is that, yes, you're quite right. Not everything has to go to court. It can be negotiated, right? But do I get a sense that, your family and many other significant families, right, have gone into the TRC, come out of the TRC, 30 years into democracy, and felt there's been so much that's not been covered, and it's left a bitterness, a bitter taste in the proceedings thus far. I mean, is that where your family fits on this?
Yes, of course. Ashraf, the issue, remember that the TRC handed over, a 7-volume report to then President Thabo Mbeki. And in those reports, the TRC had made several recommendations, around what needs to happen, related to these TRC cases. The TRC said, some instances, other families and cases, they required further investigations and then perhaps prosecutions. In the case, for instance, of the Cradock 4, the TRC had recommended prosecutions. There was no need for further investigations, just for the people who were denied amnesty, for them to be prosecuted. So when former President Thabo Mbeki took, that report, accepted that report, we had, as the families, we had expected that the government will respect the outcomes of the TRC and that they would implement the recommendations of the TRC. And so this is what we now need to find out. Who within the Mbeki administration, within the Zuma administration, and to a larger, not so much in the Ramaphosa administrations, but in the Zuma and Mbeki administrations, who was it that worked in those administrations that politically interfered and prevented the NPA from doing its constitutionally enshrined work to prosecute our fathers' killers? So that, and we're hoping obviously that this commission of inquiry will take us closer to the truth, because we need to know what happened after former President Thabo Mbeki accepted that report. What did he do? Why, after so many years, are we still sitting without any prosecution of apartheid murderers?
Now, clearly the issue is far broader than just your family or your father, but just so that we have context, and we can understand the human side of the story here, what happened with your father, and then what didn't happen in terms of answers?
Well, my father was part of a group of, 4 community leaders, activists from a small town in the Eastern Cape called Cradock. And, at the beginning of January 1985, the community, led obviously by my father and his comrades, seized control of power from the apartheid government. So from January 1985, the people in Cradock were governing themselves. It was a liberated zone. So to send a message, I suppose, to the rest of the country that you cannot mess with the apartheid government. The apartheid government then assassinated my father, Fort Kalata, and his comrades, Matthew Goniwe, Sparo Mkhonto, and Sicelo Mhlauli, on the evening of 27 June 1985. When they were buried on the 20th of July, on that afternoon, the then apartheid president P.W. Botha declared a state of emergency. This was only the second state of emergency to ever be declared in this country after the Sharpeville massacre in 1960. So we had expected, when the ANC took power in 1994, that our fathers' killers will be prosecuted, because there was an inquest that delivered its judgment on the 28th of May, 18 days after President Nelson Mandela took office. That inquest found that the Cradock Four were murdered by agents of the apartheid government. So we expected that the ANC would have prosecuted our fathers' killers. But here we sit, 31 years after the ANC assumed power in this country, and we are still longing for justice. It could, for us, Ashraf, it might as well be the day after my fathers were murdered, because on that day we didn't have justice. Now we sit here 40 years after they were killed, and we still don't have justice, despite having the ANC govern us for 30 years.
My sympathies, even now, 31 years later, again, to yourself and to your family, right?
Thank you, sir.
The position from the president, and he's now, without going through the courts, suggests that he and his advisors do believe that there may be cases, and the key words here is just, I'll repeat it, the commission of inquiry is to establish whether attempts were made to prevent, and I'll underline the word prevent, the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred to by the TRC to the National Prosecuting Authority. Do you get a sense now that the president okayed this because him and his advisors believe that there were attempts made to effectively block any further investigations around not just your father, but many other cases?
Yes. Now, the NPA has admitted as such, Ashraf, not just in the Craddock 4 case when we took them to court in 2021, but in the Nokuthula Simelane matter, they admitted to political interference that sought to prevent them from prosecutions. The former NDPP, Vusi Pikoli, admitted, that there was political interference. The NPA again admitted in the Supreme Court of Appeal, in the Timo matter, that yes, indeed, there was a political interference that sought to prevent the NPA from going ahead and prosecuting. So, yes, the NPA has itself admitted. So what we need to find out, Ashraf, going forward, is who the individuals were. We need to find out who those sellouts were that prevented the prosecution of our father's killers. Can you imagine, Ashraf, that here we have people in office, in holding political office, at the expense, because those people are in these offices because our fathers, their blood was spilled for the freedom that we all now enjoy. They are sitting in those offices because our fathers laid down their lives for them to be in those offices.
Okay.
And then these very same former comrades then go and prevent and say, no, you don't need to prosecute Fort Kalata's killers. Why would they do that? And who are they? We need to know that information.
Let's wrap this up. I mean, that's why the investigation hopefully will give those answers. So we don't need names now. Accepting this, if there's confirmation that there was actual political interference, which is not the same as insufficient evidence. I mean, political interference means political reasons why you must not push this case. So whatever their agenda may be. I mean, do I take it that your suspicions are that these people have to be people in high places politically?
Yes, of course, sir. Because remember, who makes a decision on whether or not to prosecute? It would be directors of public prosecutions, whether those are provincial or even national. So a small official in a department cannot go to Vusi Pikoli and seek to influence him or to stop a prosecution. So the people that would go to Vusi Pikoli are people that held high office. That held high office not only within government but also within the governing within the governing party.
Let's leave it at that, and I hope you and your family get your much needed justice. Lukhanyo Kalata, the son of Fort Kalata, referring to the Craddock 4, remember. But it's not just them. There's so many others. I think the Kathrada issue was also brought up, and many others. So much undone, so much left alone, and fingers pointed to political interference. And now a judicial commission inquiry to establish whether attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecutions of apartheid crimes referred to by the TRC. I tell you what, that is going to be another big issue. This is the National Pulse.
If you are a pedestrian, when using the road, make smart choices. Only cross the road at a marked intersection or pedestrian crossing. Avoid jaywalking. Wear bright clothing at night. These small habits save lives. Road safety is everyone's responsibility. Ensure that you and your loved ones arrive alive. This message is brought to you by the National Department of Transport.
It takes a while before these arch rivals meet in the final. But when they do, everything stops. Nabi is confident to delight the Amakhosi fans.
If the fans love Kaizer Chiefs, automatically love Nabi.
While the back-to-back victor, Rivero, chases the third consecutive title.
Whenever it's time to go, we're going with the intention to be competitive, to try to be better than the opponent.
This is the Nedbank Cup final. Witness the Soweto Derby. Golden Black battles it out with Black and White on Saturday, 10 May at 4:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Then on SABC radio stations at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Join
That's Tuesday on Afternoon Express as Mihlali Ndamase reveals tips and tricks she used to become a makeup and beauty legend.
Tando Tabete shows us with hard work and dedication, anyone can reach their dreams.
Social media star and sneakerhead Kim Jade shares a day in her life.
Interior designers Silvio Rick and Leslie Carsten give us a tour of their stunning home.
That's Tuesday at 6 p.m. with repeats on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
I see on the one hand, we've had so much discussion around VAT and how it impacts our country. You tend to forget about other global issues that South Africa has been a part of. I now see that many political parties have come together at Constitution Hill for the launch of the Week for Palestine 2025 under this theme of Red Card Israel. And, these are activists, but also political leaders from different political parties all coming together. Now, what about the Minister of Police himself? Well, the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, is hosting a Minister MEC session in Bella Bella, that's in Limpopo. Now, the Minister took some time from the session to brief the media on investigations into the deaths of those 3 police officers we spoke about yesterday. The horrific story where they were found dead in the Hanops River, right? And the Minister, we're going to pick out some highlights in terms of what he said. He first spoke about this and reflected the issue of what may have happened to the 3 police officers, represented what the police ministry, in his opinion, never thought would happen to the officers.
For the 3 constables and had come to a tragic end following the discovery of multiple bodies in the Hanops River in Centurion. The announcement was made by the National Commissioner, General Masimula, supported by his team. Now, these police officers were reported missing on the 23rd of April 2025. Now, Constable Base Sinoche and Tsebekulu Linda, all of them together, they represented what we never expected would ever happen to our police officers. And all the time, after the National Commissioner constituted a team, we're holding our teeth on the matter and not knowing how this matter will end. Now, National Commissioner also informed us that there was an additional bodies that were found, and that is the additional body was that of a SAPS groundsman stationed at the Littleton police station. Now, I want to take this opportunity as a collective family of people in the policing aspect in our country, safety as well, all inclusive of provinces, to extend our heartfelt condolences to the directly affected families. Of course, we don't exclude ourselves from affected families as SAPs, but we're talking in this instance those who are close to the departed officers.
And the minister also emphasized this point: stick with the facts.
Case hoping for the safe return of the officers. There were a number of opinions which have been sponsored by individuals and media houses on what could have happened. And we appreciate that there would have been many statements and opinions made when an incident of this nature takes place. But we are appealing to everybody to deal with, to focus on facts as laid out by the National Commissioner, who has our support in this particular issue that he is leading all subs on. We are saying that although people have views and can share their views, but the National Commission and team have done investigations on this and the effects, and they have put them out in as transparent a way as possible. We are confident that the team that the National Commissioner deployed there worked efficiently as they could, and hence the matter is now in the public in terms of the outcome.
And then the National Police Commissioner, General Fani Masemola, well, he addressed the issues of discrepancies in the timelines of the vehicle's movement provided by cameras and tracking devices.
The accident looks like it did happen around 02/2022. Of course, the signal of the tracker that it went up to 5 o'clock, at this stage we cannot deny or accept that, but we can take it that probably it is the case. One will have to take note probably that maybe the battery on the car took time to, even in the water, it took time to lose signal. That we are not those experts. We can't really argue against the tracker company or what they are saying. But however, what we know is that yes, around 02/22, we do have a central camera that is at Brakfontein interchange that have captured the car passing there. So we presume immediately thereafter the car went then into the water, and yes, the cell phones, the signal did go off immediately thereafter. The countries, yes, the investigation team did confirm. Remember, they went through all cameras, including countries from Grasmere, Toll Plaza going north on the N1. They did confirm that some countries did assist them in seeing to either the car have passed that area, including other cameras. The accident looks like it did happen around.
Okay, we'll pause there. Let's further comments from you are most welcome, because we need to get a sense of your feel for the National Pulse. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Utsila.
Thanks, Ashraf. In the headlines, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has appealed to the public to refrain from speculating on what might have led to the death of the 3 police constables. Their bodies were recovered at the Henops River in Centurion yesterday. President Cyril Ramaphosa is to establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe if attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the TRC to the NPA. And Israel has struck what it calls extremists in Syria amid an outbreak of sectarian violence in mainly Druze areas near Damascus. It called it a message to the Syrian authorities that it expects them to take action to prevent harm to the Druze. Details at 5 o'clock with Greg House.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Boysons. In Bedfordview, the R24 eastbound has delays towards Giluli's interchange, and the N3 northbound queuing on the link to the N12 east at Giluli's interchange. In KZN, the N3 northbound in Mooi River has a crash near Hydecote interchange. The M13 westbound has a crash near Candela Road, and the M7 eastbound queuing towards South Coast Road. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards the N2 highway exit, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend, and Bacon Cross Street outbound slow moving towards the elevated freeway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, so the Amajita team lost their opening game.
Yes.
And they're playing another one.
They're playing another one
To
today,
now.
actually.
Yeah, to now.
Around 5 to now, around 5 p.m. Yes, they are in action and they're facing Tanzania in the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. And Amajita midfielder Khumule Mokekana has expressed confidence that they will bounce back from their opening clash to host Egypt.
Yeah, we really needed early goal, but even though football is football, anything could happen. So I think we just the mentality that we have and the positive energy that is in the group. So I think even if the game drags a bit, we just have to keep the positive energy, and the goal will eventually come. Yeah, I think in my game is key, because we might have all the possession, but I think I also have to take more shots on goal because I have the ability to do so. So I think taking more shots and getting goals for my team.
That goes for the whole team as well.
Yeah, for the whole team. Yeah, we also have to take shots from goal because we find ourselves a lot in and around the box. So I think we have to take shots at goal and we eventually score because we do have the quality to score from outside the box, and so we must take shots though that we can score here.
More action to look forward to tonight, though. Orlando Pirates hosts Kukune United in the Betway Premiership tonight, with hopes to bounce back to winning ways from their continental assignment. The Buccaneers are 9 points under Mamelodi Sundowns, and main focus today will be cutting that lead down. Meanwhile, former Orlando Pirates midfielder Lebogang Mokoena says that although Pirates have already won a trophy this season, they'll be disappointed should they not win either the Nedbank Cup or the Betway Premiership.
I'd say it would be a bit of a disappointing season because the past 2 seasons with Coach Rivero being there, they've been the champions of they've been the Cup Kings, with the Nedbank, with the MTN. Right now they're just sitting with the MTN, and I think the Nedbank would be something that they'll be vying for, and also for the league because there is that little bit of a gap. But I think something that they have their hands on is the final of the Nedbank. If they can win the Nedbank, I think that it would have been a good season for them because reaching the semis of the Champions League hasn't been easy, and it's been a couple of years since they've been in that stage. So it would be a great achievement if only they can win the Nedbank Cup or the league. If they don't get 2 of them, they need to get 1, and I think that will just put them on a maybe +1 from the previous season in terms of the performance of the team this season.
Then Barcelona and Inter Milan will battle it out to book their spot in the Champions League final, winning with a win in the opening leg of their semi-final showdown tonight. Barca will be without star striker Robert Lewandowski, who's still recovering from a leg injury. In his absence, Ferran Torres is expected to lead the line, while Inter will be without key defender Benjamin Pavard, who was injured in the 1-0 loss to Roma on Sunday. In cricket, the Proteas woman batter Tasman Britt says that they will be looking to improve when they face Sri Lanka in their next match of the Tri-Series on Friday. Remember, they went down by 15 runs to India.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of positive. I think in any game, whether you win or lose, you can always take positivity out of it, which actually Mandla, our coach, came to a few of our goals and said we might have lost today, but there were a lot of positivity or a lot of positives to take out. So yeah, at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we take those catches. We've got to make sure we're hitting the right line and lens, and same thing with the batting. We've got to make sure we keep the momentum going. Up front, the momentum was quite wild, but the middle period, I think we lacked to rotate a bit more.
Meanwhile, Bangladesh won the second and final test against Zimbabwe by an innings and 106 runs. Zimbabwe scored 227 in the first innings after winning the toss, with Bangladesh scoring a formidable 4 in response, and the visitors then collapsed to 111 in the second session of the third day. In athletics, 4-time South African champion and national indoor 1500-meter record holder Tshepo Chite is eagerly anticipating his debut at the Grand Slam Shot Course Challenger in Miami on Friday and Saturday. Having left for the US on Monday, Chite has says that he's excited about competing in both the 800-meter and 1500-meter races.
Yeah, the competition is gonna be hard. That's why my this year approach is different. That's why I'm doing. So far, if you can look into my journey, I've been doing more 800 than 1500. I did only 1500. Just because of we want to approach it differently, because we know that the competition there is high. That's why I want to try by all means to keep it up with them.
Finally, Rory McIlroy will play the Scottish Open as part of his preparations for the Open Championship in his native Northern Ireland. The Masters champion will aim to win a second Open title at Royal Portrush from the 17th to the 20th of July. The Scottish Open is the final event before golf's fourth and final major of the year, and McIlroy will return to the Renaissance Club, where he won the title back in 2023 by beating Scotland's Bob by one shot. I'll have more on other sports in the next
Before you go on, I'll ask you something very quickly. You know, you played the clip earlier of the where the reference was made about the Nedbank Cup and the MTN tournament and the league. And it's interesting, you know, what was said is like, well, Nedbank Cup, or not Nedbank Cup, Nedbank, MTN, and the league, meaning that those first two are so entrenched that players or coaches can't look beyond the brand name. It's so strong. But they didn't say we'll win the Betway, said we'll win the league. And I'm just wondering at what stage, and I know it's a fairly new sponsorship, at what stage do they transform to such an extent where the league is called by the name of the brand, and whether that's a good thing or not, you know, because of course if the Nedbank Cup is now sponsored by Standard Bank, you can't say who are the winners of the previous 10 Nedbank Cups because they technically never existed.
I get you. Usually they say in the PSL, but people tend to forget that the PSL is the umbrella of the main league, the Elite League, which is the Betway Premiership, and then there's the second league, which is the Motsepe.
Well, maybe that is why, you know, if you say Nedbank Cup, it almost needs to be like the Nedbank FA Cup. So you still refer to say they won the FA Cup or the Nedbank FA Cup, but it is the FA Cup. So if Nedbank moves on, you still have another sponsor for that knockout tournament.
Sure.
Anyway, I've quite enjoyed that. The Nedbank and the MTN. It's like these brands must just love that conversation. Absolutely. More sport in an hour.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
What matters is still coming up. It's a massive football rivalry. It is one of the biggest football derbies in the world. Amakhosi clashes with the Buccaneers at the Calabash. This is the Betway Premiership. Experience the Soweto Derby, Kaizer Chiefs versus Orlando Pirates on Saturday, 3 May at 2 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Then on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Meet Maria. Meet her family, the Ramirez. One wrong step and they will have you swimming with the fishes. Meet Amadeo, a trained lawyer and member of the rival business clan, the Mateus. The two fall in love and Maria's dreams of a happily ever after change when Madeo is murdered at their wedding. Their daughter, Jo, despises her mother's humble beginnings and will do anything to steal all of Maria's fortune. This is the world of Sweet Diva. Airs weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Well, let's get to those facts with Paswana Mpatlele, who's the Senior Accounts Manager at Makwe Fund Managers. Good to connect with you, Paswana. So we've got lots of news globally as well as locally, but let's start with an update with Brait Trade.
Yeah, Ashraf, good afternoon. Well, Brait it's an investment holding company that owns the likes of Virgin Active, Premier Foods, and a fashion business called New Look. The guys are managing okay in a consumer environment where it's pretty unstable in South Africa, but the Virgin Active business reflects good recovery through the revenue up 13% year on year. More good of support comes from the other European operations. Premier Food remains a defensive operation for them. As their earnings are still increasing, with HEPS expected to increase by over 20% thanks to cost-cutting efforts and stronger margins. When we look at the overall market, we're seeing that developments. We're seeing Finance Minister announced that a new budget to be tabled on 21 May. The focus hinting around cost-cutting in order to help debt levels and reflecting fiscal discipline, investment to support GDP growth, deregulation. If all these are achieved in one form or another, we could provide some mid-level boost to our economy going into the second half. Meanwhile, China's manufacturing data came through, falling behind into contraction on those tariff policies, and this has had a negative impact. Generally, we've seen quickly on the commodities. We see copper drop by 6%, oil is down by 1% at $62.34 a barrel. Further pressure came from the fact that the US data concluded a more weakness stagflation scenario where the PCE inflation was higher than expected at 3.5%, while the GDP for quarter one was basically shrink to 0.3, and that was more than expected. And this has provided a bit of ease for gold as it stopped its losses, just down 0.2 at $3,308 an ounce. Meanwhile, equities reversed their gains. We see US open lower, S&P down 1.5%, Nasdaq 2%, Dow 1%, Europe, FTSE and CAC down 0.2, DAX down 0.5. Locally, we're seeing the JSE just managing to keep the gains, but has eased at 0.2 up, thanks to industrials up 0.6, financials is down 0.2, and resource sectors down 0.1. The rand is relatively weaker. Rand against the dollar is at 18.61, rand against the euro is 21.15, and rand against the pound 24.80.
And that's your show. We'll connect again. I was going to say tomorrow. I have a feeling we'll not connect tomorrow. Maybe Friday. Thanks for that. Friday. Yeah, it's a strange time. Thanks for that. What is tomorrow? Is today Friday? Is today Monday? Either way, you can work it out and see how we do it. Either way, for us, we know it. Tomorrow is Workers' Day, which is a working day for all of us. So do listen in to the show as we cover that theme of the Workers' Day extensively.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, somebody who clearly seems to be working, or a party in recruiting other people, either they doing the pushing or the pulling, I'm not too sure, but this is interesting. We spoke about a month or two back, I think, about the ANC caucus leader at the time, Banele Majinga, who joined the DA, right? Well, now we've got news about an EFF councillor by the name of Lungizwa Nchunche, who's now moved from the EFF to the DA. Let's find out the story behind that story with the Mayor of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis. Appreciate your time, Mayor Lou Hill-Lewis. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Absolutely a pleasure.
I'm just trying to understand the bizarre, undercurrents of this move. I mean, I would think you'd almost have to have a person getting deep political training on the one side and then being politicized from the DA culture to the other before you even accept that person, isn't it? Because the ideologies are so different.
No, the ideologies couldn't be more different. But not everyone joins a political party for ideological reasons. Some people join a political party because they think at the time of joining that party is best positioned to enable them to really help in their community or roll up their sleeves and make a positive difference. Some people are just activists, not ideologues. And Councillor Nchunche shared with me that she joined the EFF thinking that she could make a real difference in her community in Cape Town. And she's just been steadily disillusioned on that front, and been, in her words, just reduced to repeating ideological slogans rather than getting anything positive done for the community. So over time, she just came to see the DA as the party actually delivering that positive change.
And what did she see about the DA? Because I suppose, in a strange way, that this is like knocking on a door, and I'm not saying it's a job application, but if we get the image, it's like, please accept me, I want to join you. You have to, you as the employer, and I'm saying that with inverted commas, need to be convinced that, hey, we need to take this person on board.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for her, but in her words, if you look at her statement, she just says that she sees the DA really trying to deliver and improve things in poor communities, despite massive challenges. And she just says she joined politics to really be an activist and make a positive difference, and she feels that she can best do that in the Democratic Alliance. And I do think there are a growing number of people who she speaks for. I mean, she's obviously one person. She's Lungiswa Ntunche. She's a great person. I've got to know her, but I think she speaks for a growing number of South Africans who say, so much is going wrong in our country, so much is being broken, and the DA stands out as really trying to fix things.
Just explain, the point that you made earlier that, you do get political party members who don't belong to a party, who belong to parties that they don't necessarily agree with ideologically. I'm trying to understand that in practical terms. How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's actually very common. You'll be surprised how few people understand political philosophy or ideology. The number is actually extremely tiny. Most people who vote, but even people who join political parties sometimes do so because where they live or someone they know is a member of that party, and they think that party at the moment is doing a great job and can make a positive change, and so they sign up. And then only after time do you start to learn about what is the philosophical history of, the EFF's deeply outdated and defunct Marxism and so on, and what the alternatives are. And so you start to place yourself on the kind of political map. And then you realize, well, actually these values are not my values, and these things don't accord with what I believe at a deep level.
Obviously, that person that we refer to as now a DA member would be deeply respected in terms of her own position within the EFF before in the Western Cape. And I'm saying that because of the power of influence. To what degree will her move, intentionally or even unintentionally influence further moves from the EFF to the DA? It's a conversation you must have had.
Yes, no, I hope so. I hope very intentionally that the politics is about addition. It is about growing and getting bigger and bigger so that you can eventually exercise your vision and values in government. That is the basic definition of democratic politics. And so you have to always constantly be looking how to add to your numbers and add to your cause. And that by definition means that you have to be open to people who have very different ideas or may come from very different political traditions. You can't say we are closed off to these things, because then you will soon wither and die. So we do have to throw open our arms of welcome, as we do, and I'm sure that many other people will follow.
So the person in question we're talking about, was a councillor within the EFF. What would be the position now within the DA?
She has no position in the DA. She's joined as a member of the DA, and she's obviously going to stand as a councillor. She's certainly not guaranteed success. She must go through the same electoral selection process that I and any other councillor in the DA has to go through, and hopefully she will do well in that process and come out tops.
Okay, just lastly, what has been the reaction from within the DA itself upon hearing that we now have, in inverted commas, an EFF member within our ranks?
Yes, I'm sure there was much bemusement and maybe even a little bit of concern, because so much of the EFF is taken up by hatred and division and threats of violence and so on. And I think it's just important to remember that the language and political philosophy and political stance of the leadership of the EFF is not necessarily that of every individual member. There's lots of members in the EFF who disagree with the hatred and division of that party, and who are quietly uncomfortable. Maybe they have no other options. Maybe they feel too timid to speak up. But I hope they feel braver now.
Let's leave it at that, and let's see what happens next in the world of politics in Cape Town, around the country.
Save and win a car with Spar, for real. Stand to win one of 50 fiery red Hyundai Grand i10 sedans. Buy any participating products and swipe your rewards card to enter. Get 200-gram Jacob's Cronon coffee jar or 230-gram refill for $144.99, plus 400 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Or 1 liter Spar Long Life Milk 6-pack for $89.99, plus 200 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Price is valid until 6 May while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
Marawai. Why did you think you could change your tire when you've never even changed a light bulb successfully? Mara, why? Why not switch to Santam and get 24/7 roadside assistance to get you moving again? Choose the insurer with cover options that suit your needs. Call 0860 444 444 or SMS cover to 36101. Santam. This is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
The Spanish Princess series continues the story of Queen Catherine and Henry VIII. Catherine's struggle to produce an heir places her marriage and position in the court at risk, and she's haunted by her choices from the past. Despite proving herself a politician, a diplomat, and a national inspiration, and even a military commander, Catherine must battle to save her love with the king and to preserve the peace and prosperity of their reign. The Spanish Princess Season 2 airs Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Right, let's get your thoughts, because I want you to connect to the National Pulse, and the best way to do that, besides just listening, is actually to contribute. So what about that conversation with the Cape Town mayor and their latest acquisition?
Good afternoon, Ashraf, SAFM listeners. Ashraf, I don't believe the mayor of Cape Town when he says they will just resign from the ANC or the EFF and they'll just get into the queue as well and be voted like any other member. No, they get something. No one can just drop his or her salary for mahala. It will never happen. Not in South Africa. It will never happen. They are getting something from the DA, even though they're not going to occupy those positions. Thank you, Arun.
So if that's the case, forget the DA. Are we then saying that that councillor is also dishonest because you know that councillor is being okay to being bought? Just think about that.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ashraf Johnson here in Bombela. Mr. Lewis says in the AFF there's so much hatred. He must get his head examined, really. There's no hatred in the EFF. I'm not a member of the EFF, but the EFF calls a spade a spade. Simple as that. They were actually at the receiving end of hatred by racists for many years. For Mr. Lewis to come out and say in the EFF there's so much, they do not hate white people. They just tell the truth. That is the difference between the EFF and other political parties.
Well, I mean, I heard what he said. I mean, and they've said it often. I wonder whether others agree with that point, that the EFF themselves are a party that sort of foments hatred in terms of their ideology and how they pronounce those ideologies up front. I wonder whether others would agree with that. I'd certainly welcome your comments on that, right? Here's one. Hi, Ashraf, good day. Would it be a big ask if the flag can be flown at half-mast until the 4 police officers are buried, as this is the first time 4 police officers are lost in a country, and to highlight to government the levels of crime in our country, to focus more even amending the justice system, including the constitution from Thabo. Thabo, you know what the problem is? It's not conclusive what caused the death of those 3 missing people. There were 5 in total, but 3, it could well have even been that the car just spun over into the river. So we don't, it's not an out-and-out crime issue until we know better. It's not clear, okay? Right, here's another.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. Look, what the lady did, I don't think it's uncommon. A political party like EFF, they have mixed ideologies, and you kind of like 90% of what they stand for, and then maybe 10% you don't like. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Many people in the EFF, they don't like open border policies, for instance, but here we are supporting it.
I think what's interesting about what you said is yes, I mean, people move from one party to the other, but you know, if you look at like a whole campus, you know, do they move like 30, 40 degrees at a time, or do they move like, 360 degrees? And this seems to be the case here where, you're moving from the EFF with one ideology on the one hand and the DA with another ideology that are diametrically opposed to each other in everything. So, for example, when they had the GNU discussions, what did that councillor think about what her party, the EFF, were thinking about that other party called the DA? And here's a thought to you. Do you know anybody who's moved from the DA directly to the EFF? I want to know.
Jacques here from Port Elizabeth. I would say that one word for Donald Trump's 100 days in office is refreshing, because very seldom have I seen politicians actually do what they said they were going to do in their campaigning manifestos and the promises that they made to the public beforehand. So, yes, like him or not, he at least does what he says he's going to do, unlike many politicians around the world, and especially in South Africa.
Well, I take your point about that, but you see, if saying what you're going to do and then doing it makes it refreshing, what happens if what you said in the first place is actually not a good thing? Just consider that as an option.
Afternoon, Ashraf, together with the listeners. This is Ngabs Owaseqibala. One word for Donald Trump. He is a destroyer. Then one will have to choose or to see what he destroyed, but a lot he has destroyed. Thank you.
A destroyer. I'm thinking about the image of a midfield hard man playing football called a destroyer. Got that?
Hi, Ashraf Khalishuma Wisela from Mokopane. The ANC has committed political suicide, and thanks to them, they've taken down IFP, Bossa, Action SA, and that other one of McKenzie with them. Thank you very much.
Okay, why have they taken them down? Just explain that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Hope you're well. It's Mark from Cape Town here. Listen to you talking to Michael Bagram and that they're going to go to the Constitutional Court and everything about this whole 5% male representation and stuff like that. I wonder if the guy that criticized my comment yesterday afternoon is actually going to phone in and criticize Michael Bagram. But I actually just wanted to say that, you know what? The thing is that the African population has increased by 20 million. And why should white males still be held responsible now for that 20 million increase in black population? I mean, how many jobs has the black population actually created, and how many jobs has the ANC government created? Probably next to nothing. So why hold the other people responsible for something that's not their fault?
Well, I don't know about they've not created any jobs, because that would be a sweeping statement anyway. But maybe here's the point to you as well. Okay, what is the solution? What is an absolute workable solution where you want transformation of society? It must begin to reflect this country we live in without undermining the society and the economy and those important issues where you don't trip the dominoes. What would be the workable solution? At the moment, we probably don't have it, isn't it? Right, let's get the news. Just gone 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, an appeal to the public over police officers' deaths, and Israel hits targets in Syria. Good day to you. The police minister, Senzo Mchunu, was appealing to the public to refrain from speculating on what might have led to the death of 3 police constables. The 3 officers were travelling from the Free State to their deployments in Limpopo as part of Operation Vala Mgodi when they disappeared a week ago. Their bodies were recovered at the Henops River in Centurion, south of Pretoria, yesterday. The ministers appealed for sensitivity as police investigations continue.
And we are then urging the public to although free to express themselves, but have compassion and sympathy with this sensitive matter, and not create wrong impressions about what has happened, and replace facts with speculation and just thinking of individuals.
Meanwhile, the National Police Commissioner, Fani Masemola, says footage from Gauteng's discontinued e-tolling gantries has played a significant role in the investigation.
Well, what we know is that, yes, around 0222, we do have a Sandro camera that is at Brakfontein interchange that have captured the car passing there. So we presume immediately thereafter, the car went then into the water, and yes, the cell phones, the signal did go off immediately thereafter.
President Cyril Ramaphosa is to establish a judicial commission of inquiry to probe if attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the TRC to the NPA. The establishment of the commission follows settlement discussions in a court application brought by families of victims of apartheid-era crimes. The presidency says through this commission, the president is determined that the true facts be established and the matter brought to finality. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
Allegations of improper influence in delaying or hindering the investigation and prosecution of apartheid-era crimes have persisted from previous administrations. Through this commission, President Ramaphosa is determined that the true facts be established and the matter brought to finality. The presidency will shortly make an announcement on the head of the Commission of Inquiry, the timeframes, and the full terms of reference.
The case against a man accused of triple murder and arson after allegedly setting alight his 4-year-old daughter, his partner and his partner's mother has been postponed to next week by the Magistrates Court in East London and the Eastern Cape. The 35-year-old accused is alleged to have bought petrol before setting the family alight inside a locked shack. They were burnt beyond recognition. The matter has been postponed for a formal bail application. Community activist Vatiso Lukukwana.
He's very bold, aggressive by nature, if you can see, ready to face the world out there as if there's nothing of this kind that has happened, which is we don't see any person who is ready to apologize to the community, to the family at large. He's ready to face it, and we're waiting for him outside, because definitely his boldness is telling us that he is ready to see us out there.
Finally, Israel struck what it calls extremists in Syria amid an outbreak of sectarian violence in areas near the capital Damascus. The BBC's Sebastian Asher has more.
In recent days, armed clashes between forces linked to the new Syrian authorities and fighters from the Druze community have left at least 13 people dead in an area near Damascus, raising fresh concern over the security situation in Syria. Israel regards the group that toppled Bashar al-Assad as a potentially hostile force on its border as it emerged from al-Qaeda. Israel says its latest strike in Syria is a warning to show its commitment to defending the Druze, who represent a minority group not just in Syria but in Israel too. Since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, Israel's military activity inside Syria has grown increasingly aggressive.
Top story, the police minister is appealing to the public to refrain from speculating on what might have led to the death of 3 police constables. That's SAFM News, I'm Greg Hus.
In your sports this hour, Nedbank Cup final tickets to go on sale from Monday, and Djokovic set to miss Italian Open. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in Amonda is a crash before Xavier Street, the N3 southbound in Alexandra queuing towards London Road, and the N12 eastbound has a crash near Pitfontein Road exit. In KZN, the N3 westbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, the N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck after Market Road exit, and the M7 westbound queuing at the Bel Air Waxley Road junction. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. Van Scoorsdrift in Morningstar is closed between the N7 highway and Morningstar Airfield, and Viking Way eastbound in Epping queuing towards the N7 checks Harville Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
In your sports this hour, Nedbank Cup tickets to go on sale from Monday, and Djokovic set to miss Italian Open. More details at 5:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.2 FM in Table Mountain.
He called himself a king. Others call him dangerous. Andrew Tate, the man who groomed the world. The shocking documentary that uncovers how one man built an empire of influence and manipulation. From viral videos to global headlines, discover the truth behind the persona and the impact on millions of young minds. Andrew Tate, the man who groomed the world. Thursday, the 1st of May at 10 p.m. on S3. Open up. S3.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
You and I have a country to build, difficult conversations to have, solutions to find, and stories to tell. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 p.m. to midnight.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Someone messaged me to say, you know what, Ashraf, your point to say, has someone, for example, from the DA ever moved from the DA to the EFF? And of course, I don't think I know anybody. But the question was, has anybody made like a drastic shift politically, not just one small step at a time? So, not going from, the EFF to the ANC, and then maybe to the IFP, and then you go to the DA, going straight EFF to the DA. And then someone reminded me, like, what would you call, for example, F.W. de Klerk getting together with the ANC, with the banned ANC at that time, or Pik Botha, for example, becoming a member of the former foreign minister, I think at the time of the Nats, becoming a member of the ANC. Other examples? I mean, I'm talking about current ones now. Can you think of any dramatic shift from one political persuasion to the other, and whether it actually has worked for that person? I'd love to know. Well, talking about movement, what about job movements? Tomorrow is Workers' Day, and it really is about that, not just your job, but how do we, in a broad way, get South Africa working? So it is in that context that I think this is important too. I had a chat with Michael Bergrum, the DA's spokesperson on employment and labor, in the early part of the show, and listen to that podcast. It's up safm.coza/podcast/the National Pulse. You'll find it all there, right? But we spoke because their party are challenging constitutionally Section 15A of the Employment Equity Amendment Act. Bottom line to all of that, they feel it's unfair, it's unworkable, and it'll just cause more grief than anything else. And I'm paraphrasing, okay? Let's get the thoughts then of Duma Qubule, who's an economic analyst. Duma, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting. You're on the National Pulse.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. Yeah. So first things first, what do you make of the DA? One is expressing an opinion, but the other is actually...
I'm trying to walk. The reception is quite bad, but can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I can hear you pretty clearly. So my question is,
no, it's fine.
What do you make not just of the DA opposing, let's say the ANC form of employment equity, but actually taking it a step further by actually challenging it in the Constitutional Court?
Ashraf, it's really puzzling. Like, the DA wants to remain at 20% party forever because it hates all the things that black people support, like anything that has to do with redress. The DA hates it. They are opposed to the labor laws. Tomorrow's Workers' Day, and many black people support the labor laws because our mothers, our fathers, our cousins, and our sisters and brothers, they work in these companies, and so we need labor laws. And many people remember what happened under apartheid. So we need labor laws that you can't just wake up and fire someone for no reason. Secondly, our economy has not transformed. After 31 years of democracy, I'll just show the stat that this Commission for Employment Equity Statistics. Between 2009 and 2023, the percentage of white and foreign in top management in private sector went down from 76.8% to 68%. So white people, 7% of the population, they account for 68% of top management in the private sector. Black, 23.3% to 31.9%. Now, if you unpack the black, because it's African colored Indian according to the law, that's black, yeah. African, 12.5 to 14. So there's been no employment of African people for 14 years, there's been no increase. And then you look at the one that African women, 5 African women is from 3.8 to 5.5. African women is about 40% of the population, and they are the most marginalized group in the economy. So what I can say to you, Ashraf, we're not dealing with, normal skill shortages and, what we used to talk about back in the day. We are dealing with racism by companies, and we have to call them out. And in terms of these regulations, they set targets for companies based on the sector of the economy they are in. Now, these targets are more in line with the targets in the BE codes. So they went through some process of analyzing where they are now in terms of the sectors of the economy and saying, based on what we analyze now, we think you can achieve this. Now, these targets in general terms, let's say for top management, is around 50%. Now, black people, African, colored, Indian, are 93% of the economy, and you're telling me after 31 years, you can't make 50%. It's totally absurd.
Okay.
In fact, we just last one, is that I have argued every time there's a new president at the BMF, Black Management Forum, I disagree with every president of the BMF, and I say it's time to have quotas. And these are not quotas, by the way. So I believe that it's time to have quotas because we're not dealing with normal, difficulty of finding people. We're dealing with racism.
So then what do you think, what are they challenging? Are they challenging quotas? Are they challenging fixed targets? They talk about a 5%. They're talking about that the companies have no discretion in the matter. They just have to adhere.
Okay, so what used to happen in the past, let's say you are SABC, So SABC, or not SABC, like an untransformed company, you would say, well, I'm going to set my own target as the company, and I'll increase black people to 30%. And then this Commission for Employment Equity says, that's cool, And then if you don't achieve the target, you give some lame excuse, and the cycle repeats every time. So they wanted to stretch the companies to achieve higher targets because based on the statistics that I'm showing you, there has been no progress over the past 14 years in terms of employment equity. And I'm not talking, I'm not being like, I don't know what I can call it, I'm not being alarmist. I'm just giving the numbers as they are. And we have to transform this economy. And so the DA is also opposed to the Transformation Fund, something that's meant to benefit black businesses. Why on earth would they be opposed to that? I'm not sure, but if they're going to court with that as well, someone must talk sense into DA. I'm available if they want to talk to me. But anyway,
Well, we're talking about people swinging from party A to B. You never know where you may land up. But I hear what you're saying. Now, interestingly enough, Michael Bagram agreed with me about the broad point that, forget the 1 or 2% here and there, but broadly, South Africa 1994 and South Africa 2025, economically, they still reflect each other. It's a mirror of the other, besides a few percent either way. And that is problematic. And therefore, my question then is, if there's no institutional instruction in this case here, as per the Employment Equity Act, then what? That means, do we leave it to companies to voluntarily make those decisions, which is really what the DA is suggesting, that leave it up to the conscience of others?
That's a good way of putting it. So we've been doing that for 31 years. And if you're doing the same thing, and not 31 years, the Act, I think, came in 1998. So we've been doing it since that Act, whatever, how many years ago. And there's been no change. Every year, the minister, they change names, and they change names and whatever. They're telling the same story. There's no progress in terms of employment equity. And if you're doing the same thing repeatedly for, 25 years, 26 years, and there are no results, you must try something different. Okay. And, there's a case study in Norway, by the way. This right-wing minister, I can't think of the equivalent of trade and industry. He got so tired of Norwegian companies coming up with excuses why they wouldn't hire women on boards, and he set up a quota that had to be achieved in, I think, 3 years or 4 years. And the Norwegian companies did achieve the quota, So I think we need a blanket quota for employment equity, not sectoral ones. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my personal view.
Now,
Yeah.
the other part to that, so let's just assume one is companies are untransformed, they don't want to transform. I'm just saying that's one scenario. The other is they want to transform, many companies buy into it. You mentioned Black Management Forum. I mean, there's many big companies that are part of Business Leadership SA. Clearly, they would know where they should be standing in terms of the nation building project, right? But many may not be making the type of high level appointments that you talk about because of a shortage of those people. Now, why I'm asking that question is that do we not have a problem, and this goes back to the education level, that means in terms of 30-odd years of democracy, what education system have put in place that transform our education system to meet the targets of South Africa 2025 and beyond, particularly with people who come from township education or a township lifestyle? Meaning, have we not slipped up there?
Well, our education system sucks, But before we go there, now, there's one story that I've heard that is positive in South Africa, on this 31 years, is what the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants did to train Black chartered accountants with a focus on Black women chartered accountants. So I haven't seen the stats, but it's about 20, I can't remember, about 20,000 or 18,000 Black accountants, chartered accountants from, there was a handful, 22,000, and they've created these people. I do not see these African women, Black women chartered accountants on the board. I do research a lot, I don't see them on the boards, on the CFOs of these JSE listed companies. That's number one. So I know that we're still very few compared to all the chartered accountants, but there's many, especially Black women, because the majority of the Black chartered accountants are women, and I don't see them in terms of the company boards as CFOs. The second thing I want to say is that our education system, for all its faults, it is now turning out more than 200,000 graduates every year. And the majority of the graduates are in STEM, business, commerce, and management. And there's this myth that so there's a lot of people. So we're churning out 200,000, and there's now 1 million unemployed graduates. So if the problem was on the supply side, we wouldn't be seeing. And then the jobs that we're talking about in top senior and middle management, it's a fraction of the total employment in the economy.
So therefore, in the minute we have remaining, here's the thought to you. So answer maybe both, right? So if we have no problem with supply, but we have, and therefore we can't place people, then we have a serious problem, not even a black-white problem. We just have a serious problem in employment in our country anyway. And that's topical, tomorrow being Workers' Day. So something has to change in terms of that paradigm. The next one, and this is the political powder keg once again, if we follow the issue of whether it's quotas or targets, do we run the risk, and I'm trying to be practical as opposed to philosophical about it, do we run the risk of white people having conversations over supper to say, we are being squeezed out, so there's really no chance of you being employed. You're either entrepreneurial, you're a professional on your own practice, or you're out of here. I mean, those conversations are happening, like it or not. How do you respond to that? You got like 45 seconds, yeah.
I just don't know how to respond to that. The stats show that white people have never had it so good. They are sitting there in the 68% white people in top management. Nothing has changed in 31 years. So the unemployment statistics, white unemployment is less than 10%. For black African unemployment is 46%. For African women it's 50%. So no. I don't think we should be sympathetic with that. No, not at all. We have to fix our country. We have to create jobs for everybody, and we have to transform the economy. It's 31 years. It's a long time.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did say there's a last question, but here's one just with a quick one-line answer. That's it. How then do we ensure that all the people of our country walk or march in one direction as part of our nation-building project? Quick one-line answer.
You know what? Transformation, whether getting the economy growing, I don't see how white business, they benefit. White people will be the one who benefits from it. like me and you, everybody in South Africa, we are not benefiting from the current situation where our economy is not growing for 17 years, declining average living standards for almost 2 decades. Is anyone benefiting from the status quo?
Your time is up. There we are. Hopefully the time is up, not for the country itself. This is the National Pulse.
Your Sunday nights are about to get big on S3. We have some of the biggest movie titles that will take you on adventures that you simply cannot miss. Thomas arrives in a glade at the center of a giant maze. The race to escape the maze leads him to a journey. Should they escape, all questions will be answered. Tune into The Maze Runner, Sunday, the 27th of April. Maze Runner Darth Cure on the 4th of May. Maze Runner The Scorched Trials on the 11th of May. S3 Blockbuster Movies, Sundays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Well, I'll tell you what, that conversation, so interesting. Feel free to add to that conversation that I had with Duma Qubule, who's an economics analyst. But I mean, that's it. That's why we have this national pulse here. You and I talking, there are people around the country having the same conversations, bounce off each other. We know we agree and we know we disagree. But the broader question is not what's right for you as an individual. What is in the national interest of the entire country? It's a very difficult question to answer, but it's a very important one, wherever you may be in the world. What's right for the country? Well, what's right for the country regarding other issues around VAT and more? We know that VAT, as we know it now, has been scrapped. Well, not VAT has been scrapped. That increase has been scrapped, right? So it's still at 15%. But COSATU has a view, and they've urged SARS to consider taxing the wealthy more than the poor. And I would think that linked to all of that is this issue of finding the missing billions now that we don't have this VAT increase, right? Matthew Parks is the COSATU's parliamentary coordinator, and you have a position on this, Matthew. Go for it. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So explain this point about wanting to tax the wealthy more than the poor. And because the flip side would that be to say the wealthy will say, well, how much more can we afford to be taxed?
No, sure. No one likes to pay tax. It's one of those things everybody hates in life, along with death. But it's a necessity to fund the state. I think our position is that philosophically, tax must always be biased towards the poor. Those who earn the least must pay the least, must be protected. And those who earn the most must pay their fair share because they can afford to do so. We live in a society where we need to have solidarity with the most poor and vulnerable members. You can't sustain a society where you have 4 out of 10 South Africans who cannot find work, who live in misery in the most squalid conditions. We'd opposed a VAT hike and not adjusting personal income tax brackets for inflation because we thought that would just present an unfair burden to millions of working and middle-class families who are already struggling to cope with the rising cost of living, who are highly indebted, and who spend most of the money on goods like electricity and transport, whose inflation rate is far above the general inflation rate. We think there's plenty of alternatives, but number one is to make sure that those taxes which you already have are paid. We have a 64% tax compliance rate. Now, number one position is that SARS, which has done excellent work over the past few years, must be given the resources it needs to ensure that all taxes owed to the state are paid. It's a misnomer to say it's the poor are not paying it. It's often wealthy individuals who've got fancy lawyers, fancy accountants who can afford to dodge tax loopholes, who can buy their way out of the system, so to speak. So we think the SARS should be simply given the resources it needs. It estimates about 20 billion rand to go after that 800 billion rand of existing taxes owed to the state. We want to even be more modest. Let's just have a discussion with SARS. What resources do they need to improve tax compliance just by a mere 2% a year for the next 3 years? That's an additional 40 billion rand, but that's more than enough to cover the VAT hike. It's more than enough to begin to plug the holes to ensure the state's got the resources it needs to fund public services that working class communities and business depend upon.
So isn't the focus then on that? I mean, we just park the wealthy tax issue aside. That, I mean, just about everybody has said that SARS by and large is a very efficient organization. It does its work really, really well. But it's been hamstrung to do even better because of the lack of resources that you've just mentioned, right? So if we directed just on SARS, and it may just break many people's hearts listening, they would be able to knock on your doors and actually not charge you more taxes, but certainly ensure the taxes you should be paying will be paid, and that will solve that problem.
That's our number one tax proposal. Give SARS a blank check, so to speak. Allow them to go after that 36% of tax which is owed to the state. Make sure it's paid. Often it's wealthy individuals. Often it's wealthy companies. Sometimes it's the illicit alcohol, tobacco industry, which is really a cutthroat industry which exploits tax the gaps. Often it's importers from overseas, say from Asia, who bring in a suit or other clothes and underclaim its value to avoid paying customs duties. So we think let's give SARS the resource to do that, but let's also have a discussion about what are the tax loopholes that we could look at reducing for the wealthy. But number one, for us, the priority is give SARS resource to enforce existing tax compliance, because it doesn't make sense to bring new tax on board if you're not enforcing the existing tax regime.
So, I mean, tax loopholes and maybe cooking the books, I get that point that you've said. I mean, that would be obvious no matter what, right? But are you also suggesting that there must be an increase of a tax rate for wealthy people? That means whatever that rate is, assuming everybody is paying anyway, and I know that's not the case, but assuming everybody's paying, that you must increase that tax rate for wealthy people. They must pay more because the coffers needs it.
So look, we think there is a space to have a discussion. Number one, around the loopholes, sure. You could look at, like Britain and other countries have done, around inheritance and estate duties. You can look at that. We think there's also space to look at the import duties for luxury goods. There already is one in place, but you could expand it to other luxury items. So we think there is space to do that. But really, I mean, and look, those will generate some money here and there, a few billion rand. It won't really generate the amount of revenue, to be honest, that you need to plug the 75 or 66 billion rand gap, so to speak, that the VAT reversal would have provided. That's why for us, number one is just give SARS the resources it needs to improve tax compliance by 2% a year, because that will fund that gap, and that's an efficient way to do it. But you have to be brutal about it, to be honest, because we all know in our towns, whether it's in Cape Town or Joburg, many shops, you can see them don't tax. They're large parts of the economy which don't pay tax, and we need to begin to chase them. And it's not a question of people in the informal sector. No, often you find these are wealthy businessmen who owe very large amounts. And I think SARS has got a debtors book of some of these high wealth individuals and companies. We think they should really be assisted to go after them. But often these are very sophisticated person with very fancy accountants and lawyers who know the loopholes, who know the tricks. So hence there is a need to give SARS resources so can employ forensic specialists, the IT systems, etc.
Right. Now, lastly, I mean, there's also been a call by some political, parties or persuasions to say, what about an apartheid tax, meaning, white South Africans, and I'm not too sure what the sliding scale would be, need to pay a one-off tax again to help the country. So, without getting to answer that point, isn't the real apartheid tax, reparations from countries like Britain or the UK and the Netherlands? And I say that to you because, COSATU is very much part of that of the tripartite alliance that makes what up to now was the ruling party. Why has that not been pursued vigorously?
Look, it's been pursued by many countries across the world. You will see in the Caribbean, the islands pursue it. Many African countries have pursued it. Not with much great success. It's difficult to do it when you're a struggling nation. It doesn't mean you don't pursue it, but I think it's a difficult one to win it, to be honest with you. There is merit to argue for it. One should continue to raise it. I think the president himself also raised similar veins when we saw a bit of vaccine hoarding by the industrialized countries before. We do need to have a discussion, say, how could we make trade relations more fair to the developing world? How could we try to invest from the industrialized countries in the developing world more? I think that might be a more productive route to take. I'm not saying the other one is not morally justified. It is. But I'm just saying you must also hedge your bets and see what can you win and what are you unlikely to win. Doesn't mean you don't pursue it, but also don't put all your eggs into that basket.
But the broader question, and you don't have to answer it now, is like, how did we ever negotiate a new country and just walk away from that particular issue? Just to consider, Matthew Parks, appreciate your time, COSATU's parliamentary coordinator. Just think about that. What does apartheid tax mean? Does it mean, again, taxing white people even more than they've been taxed? Or is it actually going to source? Where are the problems of where we've had in the country? Go to the United Kingdom, go to the Netherlands and say, hey, you owe us something. That will sort things out, won't it? So who's going to make that call? It's 5:30. Here's the news headlines with Greg.
Quick look at the headlines. The DA doesn't have any genuine concern for the poor and has exploited the VAT increase issue, according to the ANC. The police ministers appealed to the public to refrain from speculating on what might have led to the death of 3 police constables. And the Indian Prime Ministers held high-level meetings to discuss ways to respond to last week's deadly gun attack in the disputed Kashmir region. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 R24 westbound in Bedfordview has a crash before Giluli's interchange, queuing traffic on both routes. The N12 westbound has a crash before the N1 Diepkloof interchange, and the R59 southbound in Alberton, a crash before Klip River Drive exit. In KZN, the N3 westbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, the M7 westbound queuing at the Bel Air Waxley Road Junction, and Victoria Embankment outbound queuing towards the M4 highway. In Cape Town, Jan van Riebeeck Drive southbound in Parow, slow moving towards Epping Avenue. The R304 in Stellenbosch has a crash between Kayamandi and Butler-Ray Road, and the R300 westbound slow moving towards the M7 Jakes Hadwell Drive Junction. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So, Tumi, you got Kaiser Chiefs against Orlando Pirates this weekend.
Yes.
And you got Kaiser Chiefs against Orlando Pirates next weekend.
Yeah.
There should be a law against that. Man.
It's not like for
people would have the money to pay for all that 2 weeks in a row.
Listen.
Some guys in studio are nodding their heads like, yeah, you're right. You have a story about the tickets. I mean, who's going to queue up for that?
Absolutely. Well, the Premier Soccer League has confirmed that tickets to the Nedbank Cup final will go on sale from Monday. A lot of people actually have been complaining that when are they going to put those tickets on sale? Because obviously with the Nedbank Cup final going to Moses Mabhida, a lot of people have to book their flights, accommodation and stuff like that. So now it's confirmed from Monday, general access is 150 Rand, and for fair access, each person will only be allowed a maximum of 4 tickets. Meanwhile, Amajita are officially underway. They're playing Tanzania, and just keeping you up to date with that match. 26 minutes in, it remains goalless, and that is the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso says that he hopes ambition will drive them in their quest to compete on different fronts in the midst of a congested schedule. The Brazilians face Richards Bay today as they aim to extend their lead in the Betway Premiership and play Cape Town City on Saturday, and are in action again next week, Wednesday, against Chippa United.
Just ambition and ambition and ambition and ambition. When you feed yourself from victories, you need to look on the next one in order to keep your soul in peace, your mind in peace. That's what we want to do, is now approach the championship matches that we have ahead and try to get as much points as possible, as quick as possible.
It's not the only fixture underway today. There's Orlando Pirates hosting Sekhukhune United in the league tonight, with hopes of bouncing back 2 winning ways from their continental assignment. The Buccaneers are 9 points under Mamelodi Sundowns, and their main focus is definitely going to be on cutting down on that lead. Also, Stellenbosch is in action today, and they're facing Chippa United with kickoff for all these 3 matches at 7:30. Meanwhile, Barcelona and Inter Milan will battle out to book a spot in the Champions League final with the opening leg of their semi-final showdown tonight. Barca will be without star striker Robert Lewandowski, who is still recovering from a leg injury, and in his absence, Ferran Torres is expected to lead the line, while Inter will be without key defender Benjamin Pavard, who was injured in the 1-0 loss to Roma on Sunday. In cricket, the Proteas woman batter Tasman Britt says that they're hoping, they're looking to improve when they face Sri Lanka in their next match of the Tri-Series on Friday. South Africa went down by 15 runs to India.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of positive. I think in any game, whether you win or lose, you can always take positivity out of it, which actually Mandla, our coach, came to a few of our goals and said we might have lost today, but there were a lot of positivity, or a lot of positives to take out. So yeah, at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we take those catches. We've got to make sure we're hitting the right line and lengths, and same thing with the batting. We've got to make sure we keep the momentum going. Up front, the momentum was quite well, but the middle period, I think we lacked to rotate a bit more.
In rugby, the boss of European Professional Club Rugby, Jacques Reynaud, says that the Champions Cup isn't perfect, but is still a very good tournament. Now, the Champions Cup includes 24 teams from the French Top 14, English Premiership and United Rugby Championship, which features clubs from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Italy and South Africa. And teams are split into 4 groups and don't play against each other from their own league in the early round. Now, Reynaud admitted that some changes changes are needed, but says that the South African teams are quite eager to succeed in the tournament, even though their participation has raised concerns around travel and scheduling. In tennis, Iga Swiatek came from a set down to beat Madison Keys, love 6, 6-3 and 6-2 in the Madrid Open. She next faces Coco Gauff and Mira Andreeva in the semi-finals. Meanwhile, record 24-time Grand Slam winner Novak Djokovic will not take part in the Italian Open in Rome from the 17th to the 18th of May. Djokovic pulled out in the midst of a 3-match losing streak, shedding doubt on how well he'll be able to play at the upcoming French Open as he continues to seek a record 25th Grand Slam trophy and a 100th tournament title overall. On that note, it's a wrap for now. I'll be back again later.
What's coming up?
All right.
You're doing the show again tonight, right?
I am. I'm doing the show again tonight, and I have a legend, Pauline Nglanya,
Okay, wow.
Lehlono Majoro, and Lucky Lekwati, so you can imagine what we'll be talking about.
I wonder. You're not going to talk about that cricketer, are you?
Absolutely.
The 14-year-old. Do you remember his name? I can't remember anymore. I remembered yesterday. But you and I need to remember the name. The 14-year-old kid who scored 100, the fastest 100 in the IPL, the second fastest ever. But 14-year-old Laitiki, man, really, I can't even score it just by throwing a dice, honestly.
All right, then.
Okay, enjoy the show.
That's
From the shows that bring us laughter to the moments that inspire us, your SABC TV license makes it all possible. Every license paid supports local stories, top talent, and the programs that unite South Africa. Pay your TV license today. Visit tvlic.co.za or your nearest retail outlet. Hashtag your screen, your story. Together, we make it happen.
After a 2-0 away win earlier this season against Ipswich Town, the Toffees are confident of another victory.
Batters it beyond Murich, and Everton lead at Portman Road.
Meanwhile, the Tractor Boys believe the only way to make pressure mild is to triumph.
Far post is Ben Johnson. It's 2-0 Ipswich. What on earth is going on?
This is the Premier League. Catch the superb clash between Everton FC and Ipswich Town FC. The Saturday 3 May at 3:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, Jimmy hosts the SFM Market Update. I mean, today, what do you talk about on you normally don't come on a Friday, Jimmy. I'm just making the point, and I know what day today is, right? I know it's the weekend, but you want to pick up on an important issue. We know the budget issue will be retabled or tabled on the 21st of May, and you want to talk about just that and the Treasury and what we can expect.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, I have a conversation with the Director General at National Treasury, Dr. Duncan Pieterse, around that exact announcement. We got earlier today a media briefing from National Treasury around the retabling of the budget, as well as some of the processes that have been followed. So I want to get a better understanding from National Treasury themselves as to what happens now, where we go to from here, all of the questions that we have as South Africans around a third budget. What does that mean for the other announcements that were made within the budget? Does this mean we get a completely new budget? Do we now go back to the drawing board on absolutely everything, or is it just certain things that are going to be adjusted? So I want to see if I can get a bit of colour around that from National Treasury. I suspect that a lot of the conversation will be deferred to the 21st of May that we've now been given as that budget date. Regardless of that, whether we get the answers today or we get the answers on the 21st of May, I will keep South Africans and our listeners as informed as I can around that particular topic. So that we're going to look at as our big story today. We've also got a conversation with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They have signed a memorandum of understanding with the NASDAQ exchange in the US, as well as Amazon Web Services, for a modernization partnership that they're embarking on to streamline some of our exchange services and some of the cloud computing that goes into delivering the exchange. And I've got a conversation with Dr. Leila Fourie about that and getting a better sense of what that means for our exchange and what that means for our exchange in the context of South Africa and US tensions, understanding that this is primarily a relationship with a United States exchange. So we're going to look into that. And then we've also got a conversation with the FSCA. We do these Warning Wednesdays quite often. They've announced that they have imposed some sanctions on certain individuals for certain activities, and we're going to look at that. And we're also going to look at the increasing popularity of deep fakes and impersonations and how consumers can best protect themselves from that. And then because it's Wednesday, we have an executive lounge on a Wednesday. We've got a conversation with the CEO of Navari Holdings to get a better sense of what it is that he does get up to when he's not at work and get to know him a little bit better there. So we've got a full show lined up, and we're going to be digging into these stories a little later on. Before we get to all of that, let me give you a quick summary of what's been happening on the markets and how the markets have closed. South African markets closed in green territory, positive numbers there. There was one sector that was in the red, that was the financial sector, that was down about 0.33%, but industrials were up 0.75%, and resources were up a little more than 0.25%. As a result, the all share and the top 40 up 0.33%. And when we look at international markets, it is largely a sea of red. Asian markets were in the green, though. Shanghai, the only market in the red, down 0.25%. But Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Sydney all in the green. European markets all in the red, with the FTSE the biggest loser there, down almost 0.33%. The Nasdaq is down 1.5%, and the S&P down 1%. That was around 5 o'clock. So those markets are obviously going to be trading into the evening, and we could see that those markets could recover. When we look at the currency side of things, Bitcoin back at $94,000 a Bitcoin. We haven't looked at that in quite some time, and it has recovered quite strongly there. That is about just under 1.75 million rand. We're back towards the 2 million rand mark. At some point, we were around 1.5 million rand, if I remember correctly on that. The rand against the dollar, 18 rand 60, 1 British pound, 24 rand 79 cents, 1 euro, 21 rand and 8 cents, 1 Australian dollar, 11 rand and 88 cents. A quick look at commodities. Brent crude looking even better, $63.24 a barrel. I'm getting more and more optimistic around a fuel price cut next week, but hopefully it is a big cut and not just a couple of cents here and there. Platinum pricing, $972 a fine ounce. Palladium, $936. Gold price, $3,307 a fine ounce. Pretty much where it was when you and I spoke this time yesterday, so not much movement on that front. But we will dig into these and other stories a little later on. I've got David Shapiro of Sasfin Wealth to talk markets with me a little later on. I want to get his thoughts around what's happening. He's recently returned from the United States. I think he might actually still be in the United States, but we're going to get a sense of what's happening in the US, what's happening locally, what's happening around the world as well. So we're going to have that conversation when we come back a little later on. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
And I'm reflecting on what you may talk to Leila Fourie about. I was invited to spend some time with her in her office at the height of COVID, where that JSE was absolutely dead. But of course, she was there and a few other people, and a very interesting conversation in terms of where the JSE is and where the country is headed. That is a couple of years ago, of course. So I'd enjoy that show, 6 to 7. And then as Tumi said, Pauline Ndlanya and a whole lot of other people coming up on her show, 7 to 8, SAFM's Top Sport. Do not miss that. But we have a show right now. And you know what? You're the show. Let's get connected on the National Pulse. I want to hear you.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, I just wonder what you're going to bring up. Let's hear.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, I think people who are moving from one party to the other are opportunistics. And then most of them do this because they're only fishing for greener pastures. It's not about the service that she promises to deliver when she's with DA. She had that opportunity to do it when she was a councillor for EFF. We have many of them that went from one party to the other. The example is Manye. Manye is one person who has been to all these political parties. So we are not surprised with people like this one who would be moving from one party to the other. Thank you, Ashraf.
Well, Jimmy Manye is an interesting example. I mean, where does he go next? I mean, I think he's okay now, but imagine him shifts again. Not just the ANC moves to, well, can you imagine with the DA? No, let me just keep quiet. I'll get into trouble. There we are. Here's another one.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The time of Figilam Barula of fooling South African is just over. The guy must just sit down and relax, because he was the one who was saying the budget is pro-poor, but again now is the one who's saying they welcome the removal of VAT hike. Thank you.
Well, I tell you what, we can quote politicians every single day, and you'll find contradictions in what they say publicly. I'm not even talking about privately.
On this 100 days of Trump, it's only chaotic and confusion. The art of the deal is getting him down. While on the other side, China is using the art of war, and I think they are winning.
The Art of War. You're trying to promote a book, which I think we all must read. If you've read it, read it again. If you haven't read it, read it. The Art of War.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ashraf. Dr. Ashraf, on the issue of the now deceased police officers, these updates that the police are doing, now they are looking for the vehicle. Isn't it that part of the investigation to say you must keep quiet, don't update the criminals? Because now they are going to make sure that vehicle, whatever evidence was on that vehicle, they are going to destroy it. And by the way, Dr. Ashraf, where is that journalist that went missing? That journalist is still missing, Dr. Ashraf, is still not found.
Okay, but that journalist is another story, and I hear you. As far as this issue, I see parts of the vehicle have been found. They can't not look for the vehicle. They have to. And we don't really know exactly what actually happened. We can suspect. We don't really know up to now.
Afternoon, Ashraf Matumata Eslopak Tembisa. I can describe those days as 100 days of hell. 100 days of hell. I thank you.
Oh my goodness, 100 days of hell. Let me get praying.
Save and win a car with Spar, for real. Stand to win one of 50 fiery red Hyundai Grand i10 sedans. Buy any participating products and swipe your rewards card to enter. Get 2-liter Coca-Cola regular. Buy 3 for 60 Rand. Plus 100 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Or 80-gram Cadbury chocolate slabs. Buy any 2 for 32 Rand. Plus 100 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Price is valid until 6 May. While stocks last. T's and C's apply.
When using the road, please note that these are some of South Africa's high-risk roads. Ventertop Road in Northwest, R61 Mthatha in Eastern Cape, N2 Pongola in KwaZulu-Natal, R61 Mzamba in Eastern Cape, N2 Umkomas in Eastern Cape. Ensure that you, your loved ones, and all passengers arrive alive. This message is brought to you by the National Department of Transport.
It's the catch of the season as our 3 madcap fishing fanatics are back, embarking on even a more exciting adventures across the globe. Get ready for bigger fish, bigger laughs, and more extreme destinations in a series packed with adrenaline-fueled fishing antics and plenty of friendly rivalry. Fishing Impossible Season 2, Fridays at 10 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, the last comment we had about Donald Trump was hell. There's others on my Facebook page as well as SAFM, and here's some of them. Jason Bear saying lunacy. Hanif Lunach, councillor, I think, says disastrous. Andrew Wilden says Armageddon. Adila Boda has got a clown there. Brooks Spector was an analyst, we know him. Apocalyptic. Toussaint says 100 days of bullying achieved nothing. And then there's just one from Kagiso saying Donald Trump is doing exactly what he promised his voters. We may not like it, but unfortunately that's what the majority of Americans voted for and are getting exactly that. It's unlike us here in South Africa, where politicians lie to us to a point where we have become tolerant of their nonsensical empty promises. Right, more calls, not just of Trump, but the issue of quotas. Mandla in Cape Town. Go for it, Mandla.
Yeah, Ashraf. My brother, I was listening to this guy you were talking with about the quotas, about this thing of black management and white managers. You see, the guy doesn't have the facts when he argues. He just argue for the sake of arguing.
Wait, which one? Sorry, I had a chat with 2 people. We spoke to the DA representative earlier on at about 10 past 3. Duma, right? Okay, Duma. Yeah, go for it. Duma Kubule. Yeah.
Yes. You know, if he wants a real change to happen, he must argue with facts. He must say in company A, there was a post that was advertised. 5 black people applied for the post and 2 white applied. Those black people were qualified and they had the necessary experience, but they were not hired because they were black. You must have those facts.
Okay, but maybe to be fair, there's not enough time to do that. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to have a chat with Temba and Keys to say whether we can actually get someone to reflect the detail tomorrow, because tomorrow being Workers' Day, it is really very much about jobs and getting working. So maybe I'll do that, right? Maybe I'm going to try. Mandla, anything else?
Yeah, like for instance, a company like a club like Kaizer Chiefs and Pirates, they hire 5 people from overseas. They overlook the black coaches that are here in South Africa, and no one is complaining about it because those guys they're overseas. They are well advanced in sports.
Okay.
You see?
Well,
So
you raise
it's
an
not
interesting one.
for
Is there a principle to consider regarding even football appointments or not? Mandla, let's move on. I think you've driven a point home that there's an important one. Thanks for that in your contribution. Love it when you connect to the National Pulse. Alex in Cape Town. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on solving, the issues of, raising money to help.
Please do. If you sort that out, you'll be the new Minister of Finance. Go for it.
No, I mean, honestly, I find, the politicians are a bit of a sad story. But specifically, I mean, the thing about economists is they just don't necessarily understand the business, is that you need to sell this idea of tax, and it's not going to work. I mean, raise tax to, sort out the policing system and, deal with services. People will pay more tax if the services and police system works. But if you want to change things for the poor, why doesn't the government raise money to create entrepreneurs and business people? And it deals with the other issue that the other gentleman was talking about. I mean, he talks about like transformation in the business place. I mean, you can't change things for the better by just forcing, a situation. You've got to upskill people. You've got to develop that. And obviously businesses, their responsibility is to upskill people. But, if you run a business, you're dealing with a lot of things, and, upskilling is not necessarily the right thing. So, forcing transformation through business like that is not necessarily the right thing. But look, if you want people to pay taxes, actually use the money to do what you say you're going to do. I mean, what's a joke about COSATU is, and particularly communists, which touches on the ANC, is the systems have to work in order for communism to work, which is like the joke of COSATU. And, I mean, if the political system is an absolute failure, communism and socialism is going to fail on its face.
Okay, I got that.
So,
Let's move on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you right about that? I mean, is it right that systems for communism or socialism to flourish, you need the system to be working already? Some may say, isn't the system broken anyway, even with a capitalist society that we live in? Because here's a challenge to every one of us. Don't worry about who did what and who ifs what and who employed people and who whatever. 30 odd years into democracy, I raised it before and I'll say it again. One of the fundamental issues about time 5 or 10 indices around transformation. The country had to change after 94. Otherwise, why would you have a new country? You can just continue voting for the Nats, right? One of the issues has been inequality. How come? I'm not even sure whose fault is it. We can have that debate. How come we failed so miserably with regard to narrowing that inequality cap? Something has to change even now, and I'm not even suggesting it's about quotas. I don't even know what it is, but something has to be addressed urgently. Tulani in KZN, go for it.
Ashraf, good evening.
Good evening.
I seldom agree with Duma Gubule, but this time around I 100% agree with him. He has provided undisputed analysis and a comparison over time. All this by the DA boils down to racism. Now in politics they say don't disturb your enemy when he's committing the mistake. The DA actually is anti-redress, anti-transformation to the core. There is no more, I think, what you can expect. They've shown and demonstrated that they are for everything that is against transformation, correcting the previous injustices.
So let me interject you on that point, and I hear you. I'm not going to contest that point because many people have that view about the DA. Okay, so let's say they are anti-transformation that we speak about, right? Now the ANC, we may say, is they're not anti-transformation. In fact, they are for transformation, and all their policies suggest they're for transformation. Having said that, in practical terms, the ANC's management of the country for 30 odd years has effectively not transformed the country. So they, never mind what the policies of the two parties are, the ANC in charge, what have they done to actually truly transform the country for the better?
I think the ANC has taken into consideration the practical work of doing. It's unlike theorizing. When you begin to usher in a humane way transformation, there are some resistance that you encounter. That is why the ANC did not force everything, but it happened gradually and in accordance with the objective conditions on the ground.
Okay, got that.
In phases.
Yeah. In phases, but
not yes, you can't, because we did not take the country through revolution. So that is why political emancipation was critical. And from there, advance to economic emancipation.
Yeah, but I hear that, Thulani. We're going to move on. I mean, I hear you, but the question is how much time do they have? If they've done the political and still battling with the economic, then how long do we have as a country? Because you have to see shifts. And I don't mean by transformation shifts, you must compromise the standard of living. No, you need to ensure, let me put it this way. If there's 10 people on the table and they want a seat at the table, you don't knock the 10 off and bring another 10 people in. You create a table that's big enough for 60 people and you make sure that all 60 have their food. That is the challenge. Louis, quick one from you in Rustenburg. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Go for it.
Okay. I just want to comment about the people that are busy commenting about black people or white people.
Yeah.
Ashraf, I'm actually sitting on a panel where I interview people. If you apply for a job, we shortlist. If you're sitting in front of me, I don't care whether you're black or white. I look at the interest of the company because we need to produce, and people must stop hiring white people or hiring black people of their color. Hire the right person. Any person is good.
Okay, got that. You certainly have made your case for what's in the interest of your company. Is what is in the interest of your company also in the interest of the country? It's such a complex issue. Maybe the last one or two I can voice notes I can play quickly about the Commission of Inquiry.
Oh my goodness. There we go again. Another Commission of Inquiry? I mean, what's wrong with Cyril Ramaphosa? I mean, he's now sitting on the report of the most expensive Commission of Inquiry. He's doing nothing about that. Now he wants to establish another, my goodness. And after establishing that and establishing the facts, what is he going to do? Nothing. We don't need another Commission of Inquiry. We want, if at least he could say, all those who are implicated, who are still alive, should be prosecuted. That's all. Not to say we want to know who prevented this from happening. No, man. No, Ramaphosa, please wake up, man.
Okay, but isn't that the fundamental issue? Somebody prevented some investigations from happening. Here's the last one I can play.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I am somewhat confused about this Commission of Inquiry that Ramaphosa wants to establish. Was not agreed upon that apartheid-era crimes will not be prosecuted. So what is this hoo-ha now about the Commission of Inquiry? Another kind of Zondo, R1 million that is going to be spent? That's bizarre.
Well, there had to be a full confession, remember that. There had to be a full confession. You had to come clean and then get that amnesty. Let me end with this. There's a tweet from Mthunzi Jack Pagati saying, normally Ashraf asks the listeners to take pictures or videos of where they are. Well, this is the Valharts Dam in Warrington. Looks like Minister Majordina opened some sluice in the Bloemhof Dam because it's absolutely flowing. And he's got this video. Check it out. I'll actually tweet it out as well. You can check it out. That's the show. Tomorrow is Workers' Day. Beyond literal workers. Come on, guys. Let's get South Africa working. Here's the news with Greg Goos.
Thank you again, Ashraf. ANC slams DA over VAT hike dispute and an appeal to the public over police officers' deaths. Good evening. The ANC says the DA doesn't have any genuine